Perhaps we need some outside universal threat to make us recognize this common bound. I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
Good evening and welcome to Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott, and we're going to get into a real important subject here tonight. YouTube influencers taking over ufology. This is why we're bringing Carl Crusher back. We had him on last week. We're going to bring him in again, and we're going to get seriously into this here in just a little bit of time. And it is a busy night tonight as the Dave 101 comes on as well. And this will be my last show before next Tuesday. Rob G will fill in for me on Friday and Monday while I am at UFOCon 2025. All right, let us say hello to each and every one of you. We got Race Fan in the gold medal position. Robert Lamoth with a silver, Kitty Caddywhack with a bronze medal tonight. Let's say hello next to Bar Madison. Hippie Deidre, how are you? Kaz is here. Kaz will be signing autographs after the show. Line up to the left of the studio, if you don't mind. To the left of the studio. Be gentle because this is Kaz's first time signing autographs. Stephanie Kenny Blankenship, how are you? David Norenberg, nice to see you. Lovely Lavira, thank you for coming on in. Hi there, Luscious Jewels, nice to have you here. Mel WD-40 is here lubing us up for tonight's show because when Carl comes on the show, he wants to be nice and lubed. He doesn't want any show rigidness going on. So Mel is lubing him up as we speak. Moving on down, let us say hello next to Carol Amario. Nice to see you. Cosmic Joe, number 29 in your program, starting at left wing from Stockholm, Sweden. Lars Jansson, there he is. Little Timmy James, we'll see you in hour 3 for the shortened UFO report. Scrolling on down, Bob Gray, nice to have you here. Just another guy named Harry. And Robert Lamoth, good to see you both. Millennium, my man, how you doing, my friend? Panda on Fire, Thomas Rock, Road Flare, good to have you all here. Karen in the Woo Train, thanks for coming on in. As we continue on with our roll call, there's Frankie B and Necessary Dialogue. Jennifer Beveridge is here. Jennifer Beveridge will be signing autographs after the show as well. Line up to the right of the studio, if you don't mind, to the right of the studio. Hillbilly Herb, how you doing? Xanos, thank you for joining us. Rockin' Rory and Gamer Quest, good to have you both here. J Truth Seeker, thank you for joining us. Hi there, Pam Harris. And who's next on our list? Fast Hemi, good to see you, my man. How you doing? Skip to Malou, good morning to you. How is your lovely sunrise? Let me know. Derek, how you doing there? Woo-poo. E-Talkin', welcome to SOR Chat. How you doing? And who is next? Bob Thorson. Thanks for coming on in. Lenda as well. Man, I raced through that. Like, what the hell do I do for another 31 seconds? I don't even know. Well, now I guess we just wait. Carl, give me a head nod if you're nice and lubed by Mel WD-40. Yeah, Carl says he's lubed up. Good job. He's lathered. Carl is lathered for tonight. Oh, God, I love this guy. Candy, how are you? Good to see you. And yeah, we'll just wait on that one here for just a second here. Yeah, reminder, Sweet Robbie G will be filling in for me tomorrow night and Monday. I am off to San Francisco at 4 o'clock in the morning. So literally, I edit this show, I go to bed for about 2.5 hours, 3 hours, and then get up and drive 5 hours, 6 hours to the airport. That's just the way it is. Azariana Trudell, welcome to SOR Chat. What is the topic? Well, you'll find out here in a moment. Susan Lawrence, how are you? And SJ, nice to have you here. Let's get the radio side going. Hello and welcome to the radio and podcast side of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We're going to take a trip into YouTube land. YouTube influencers taking over ufology. Is it healthy? Is it not? Carl Crusher is here tonight to talk about it. He is a YouTube influencer, and we are in roll call on our YouTube side as we speak. Jeremy Jones, how you doing? Walter Kochabinski, good to see you. James Fry 13, how you doing, my friend? Been a while since we had you in the room. The super chat is open. It's a wonderful way to support what we do on this show on a nightly basis. And don't forget, you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag. So make sure you check it on out. Marty Burback, how you doing? Do me a favor, everybody. It's that time of the night where I ask each and every one of you to throw those horns up. Let's rock. You listening around the world. This, my friends, is Spaced Out Radio. I'm your host, Dave Scott, sitting in the captain's chair of SOR headquarters. We welcome you to tonight's show on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a rock out Bumblefoot, read the newswire, check out our stream as well. You can follow us on X, Spaced Out Radio, Instagram, Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Tonight's show is brought to you by Chive Charities. Help make the world 10% happier by visiting Chive Charities today. You can find them on our website. Got a great show coming up for you tonight. YouTube influencer, researcher, and just a true gentleman. Carl Crusher is here to talk about YouTube's new influence on ufology. Yeah, we're going to get to that. This is an important topic that we're going to discuss. Then in hour number 3, Swamp Dweller kicks things off. Little Timmy James will be here with the UFO report. It's Dave 101 night and the weird news of the week. Let's get to it, shall we? That was a nice little pregnant pause there. Carl Crusher is a popular YouTuber with over 3 million subscribers. He's known for his deep dives into the unknown and the unexplained. With a passion for uncovering mysteries behind strange phenomena, Carl's channel has become a go-to source for fans of the bizarre and unusual. He explores everything from UFOs to strange occurrences, delving into the evidence and theories that often go unnoticed by mainstream media and people. His captivating storytelling and investigative approach have made him a trusted figure in the online world of mystery enthusiasts. Let's bring him on here. He was on last week with us, but we had to bring him back because he's so damn good. Carl Crusher, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing awesome, Dave. Thanks for having me back.
We're going to get into a lot of YouTube tonight because, you know, you're somebody who is a YouTube influencer. You've been a YouTube influencer for, I believe, the better part of a decade. And so our audience knows, before we get into our subject matter, how did this start for you? I mean, you're old enough to have had a few jobs. You've got 3 awesome sons. I mean, how did it go from, you know, going to college, or maybe just going straight into work and then getting into the YouTube influence?
Yeah. If I go way back when I was a little kid, I used to watch Chicago Cubs baseball games, and I would record them, and I had 2 VCR players that I figured out how to wire together. And even when I was a little kid, I used to try and edit the baseball games, and then I would try to voice over and record and pretend like I was the sports commentator the whole time. So even when I was like a little kid, I was making home movies and trying to edit them back and forth, even between 2 VCR players that were linked together. And so, I mean, it was clear back in the 80s, old school that way. So one day, I went to college and actually started getting a degree in communications, and I was going to go into broadcast communications. But when I got married and had kids on the way and everything, the pressures of trying to earn an income, I decided I needed to get a stable job. And so I looked around in my area, and there really, in Southeast Idaho, there wasn't a whole lot. Either you worked for the Mormon church or the university there, or you'd get like a state job. And so I tried to look for jobs in the Forest Service, in the Forest Department. And then I ended up landing a summer job working at a juvenile correction facility. And so I started out there, excuse me, just mowing lawns and things. And I moved up through the juvenile correctional facility to where I was actually doing like social work with the kids and like running them in their after school programs and their treatment programs and everything. And that was such a solid job, and it was so close to home with kids on the way that I actually changed my major at college over to social work. And so I graduated and got a bachelor's degree in social work. And so I did that for 5 years. And anybody who's ever worked at a juvenile facility or with mental health clients for a long period of time, or in the police force or on an ambulance, you know what that's like. Like it burns you out at a certain level. And so after like 5 years of doing that, I was constantly looking for my way out. And I also was working constant midnight shifts at the prison facility. So I ended up gaining a ton of weight. And at this time I ended up being like 400 pounds. So I was like a member of the Mormon church. I weighed 400 pounds, way overweight. And I was working at this juvenile correction facility, but really I was kind of the one in a sort of prison in a way. And one day I was on YouTube. This is like clear back in 2009. And I saw this guy called Shay Carl. And he's been doing vlogging forever. And there was this video of him, and I clicked on it. It was like world's greatest dad or something. And I got clickbaited. I was like, who's this guy? How did they decide who's the greatest dad? This is like back in 2009. I had no clue like what clickbait was. So I clicked it, and I realized, I was like, this guy is like, has a camera, and he's going out and filming his life every day with his family. And he doesn't even have a job. He's like somehow doing this for a living. And so I started looking into it, and I found out about like the YouTube monetization program. And I realized this was like my way out. This was what I'd always wanted to do since I was a kid, was to be a filmmaker, or I should have gone into communications and done broadcast stuff, but here I could do it for myself from home. So at that point I became like obsessed with it. And I spent just like 3 years doing it myself. I actually joined Shay Carl's weight loss competition, and then I won it. And after I won the competition, I ran my own weight loss challenge of my own. And then after that, it was like the ball was rolling. I started doing family vlogging similar to Shay, and then a lot of other variety of different things, going Bigfoot hunting, all kinds of different things. And ultimately, kind of fell into my current line of work, like looking into UFOs and all of that, back like right when COVID happened, and right, I went through a divorce and my father died. I just didn't feel like making like funny comedy content anymore. And so that's when I decided I wanted to kind of pursue and integrate my spiritual journey and all of my life questions into what I was doing. That's sort of when I made the change. But yeah, I've been doing YouTube for a long time, since 2009. But it took me over 3 years before I even made a penny and got to where I made any money off of it. And then I still had to work for several years after that before I could actually quit my day job and do it full time. And ever since then, it still feels like being a professional gambler at some level. Every upload, it's like, come on, jackpot. And you hope that tons of people like it and that it goes viral. But really, you're just kind of, you're hoping, you're playing the algorithm and the fans and seeing where it goes.
A lot of young people today, I mean, even my 11-year-old son, I mean, I ask, what do you want to do for a living? He goes, I want to make YouTube videos. I mean, this has become a career for many people. You know, how hard is it to figure it out? How hard is it to, time consuming wise, in order to try and figure out how to not only make the perfect video, but in order to make it go viral?
It's layers and layers of it, honestly. I don't think I've still even figured it out now. If I wanted to go viral, I think I kind of know the formula, but I would completely have to abandon what I'm doing and what I'm really interested in and what I'm passionate about. I would have to just go after viral content and try to have that happen. And I'm kind of not in the mood to do that lately, but it is extremely difficult. If I think as far as picking up a phone and creating a TikTok or a YouTube account and getting started today is a million times easier than it used to be. But that does not mean that you're going to make money or that you're going to be successful, because it's so easy and accessible for anybody to create an account for them and their dog and their cat and everybody around them, and just to start posting videos through their phone, that it's become a really saturated market too. So in order to get seen and to be unique is really challenging, because as soon as you get a good idea and you start posting content, or you go to somewhere or you pick a topic, then immediately, if it's any kind of decent quality, you're going to get half a dozen copycats or people that kind of take what you're doing and they emulate it and try to outdo you and do it better. And that competition is good. But something happened during COVID where a ton of people were forced to work at home, or they got laid off and lost their jobs and things, to where all of a sudden there was just like this huge surge into the social media market where tons of people were like, well, I'm going to start my candle company from home. And now you've got this huge flooded internet market. So it's really, now you have to know not just all of that and know what niche you want to go into, but you also have to kind of know your audience and what they're looking for, and the algorithm. It's like you're trying to get the artificial intelligence to love you, but you're also got to keep the real people happy. And then you also have to find a way to be happy yourself and not be a total sellout the whole time. So it's really, really challenging. I know, like Jake Paul, he got into all this professional boxing and kind of infiltrated that after being a Disney star and a YouTube star and everything. And he's gone on several interviews and said that being a YouTuber was way harder than being a pro boxer. And I would agree with him. I think it's, in a lot of ways, mentally and emotionally, is a lot more challenging because it's really unpredictable. But if you can catch a groove, and actually get to where you can do it for a living, it is a nice feeling to not have to set an alarm and to kind of be your own boss and to ride that wave if you get the chance. So I get the appeal. A lot of people do not want to get up and go work at a regular job every day. And so when they see people doing stuff online, they assume it's super easy, and they often do not know what they're getting into.
You have over 3 million subscribers on your channel. I was talking a few months back to Chris Ramsey, who has 7.17 million, and his name will come up in the next half hour, getting into UFOs. And like, he had an entire staff, and he's laid the majority of them off. He said, even for us in the millions of subscribers, it's getting difficult to actually capitalize on content, because every time you wake up, YouTube seems to be changing their algorithms, and people just don't seem to know what's what anymore. Like, you have to be, even if you're a student of the game, you're still going to fail 49% of the time.
Yeah. And as soon as you kind of adapt and you catch on to how things are going, You're right. They like make a change, or they go through some quarterly report and they adjust things, or they're recovering from some kind of a liability thing. And so they have to adjust their policies and things shift. And then they're always trying to make changes to keep up with the competitors too. So like there's something that happened to YouTube a while ago that I think really damaged YouTube. And it was the whole scandal where suddenly all this kids content they realized wasn't actually for kids. You had a ton of videos that were going out where people were dressed up like Spider-Man and Disney characters and things. And then they were about 2 minutes into the video, they were doing a bunch of inappropriate stuff on camera, and little kids were watching this and getting exposed to like adult content on YouTube. And that created this whole cascade of events where some news reporters caught on to that. In fact, one of the family vloggers is in prison now over child abuse allegations and everything that revolved around that whole time period, because they were involved in some of that. And it was pretty wild. But what YouTube did was they panicked, and to avoid all that backlash, they split the app into 2 separate apps, and they created YouTube Kids. And then they have YouTube for kids and YouTube for adults. And then all of a sudden, all of the money and all of the advertisers, all of the sponsors that were on YouTube, their money suddenly got fractured into whether your content was for kids and the advertising was a good fit for that, or whether it was for adults only. So now suddenly you had to sit there and pick on every single video if your video was going to get shown on the YouTube for Kids app and be censored off of the regular app, or if it's going to go on the regular app and then a huge part of the world is never going to see it, even if it's pretty family friendly. Like most of my content is like G-rated, I'm like anybody could sit down with their family over dinner and watch my videos and not have any problems. But I have to mark my content for adults only. And I guarantee you that kids under 18 years old are not seeing it unless they're lying about their age on the app. And so suddenly when that happened, it really fractured the algorithm and caused a ton of confusion about where content is supposed to go, whether or not your keywords matter or don't matter. And then, yeah, they've been trying to keep up ever since. And then apps like TikTok come out, and suddenly videos are in vertical format. And so YouTube panics again, and they have to come out with YouTube stories and reels. And now everybody's uploading horizontal and vertical. So every time you film a video, you're thinking, damn, how am I going to edit all this for all the other apps? Because some of them are this way and some of them are this way. And you got, and so the whole thing gets more convoluted as you go. And now with artificial intelligence, it just adds that other layer onto it. And it's constantly something that you have to adapt and evolve, and you have to survive those changes, because for me, since 2009, they've never stopped. There's almost every year there's been some death blow that I've had to find a way to change and survive through. So, I mean, if you're going to do it, you gotta be resilient.
How does somebody like Mr. Beast acquire 360 million subscribers?
If you want to get into the dark conspiracies, he's kind of an industry plant in a lot of ways. There's people that initially, I'm aware of certain YouTube channels that initially YouTube selected and gave a priority to, and they actually gave seed money to help them start an actual legitimate show because they wanted to compete with major networks. So I know that like Good Mythical Morning with Rhett and Link, when they first came out, they were just vlogging and doing podcasts. They had a show called Rhett and Link's like Chia Lincoln Show or something. It was just some comedy show. And YouTube made them an offer. I don't know how much money they got, but they got enough money that they were provided with a whole crew, studio to film in, editors, and funds to get started to kick off a show, because YouTube wanted to have that appearance of not being just filmed in everybody's bedrooms, but that there was actually content creators that were doing studio level shows. And so there was a lot of YouTubers in the early days that were kind of plucked out and picked out by YouTube to be in the pole position, to kind of set the example for the advertisers and to hit the numbers that they needed to hit. And so there's always been a little cluster of people in each category of each genre on YouTube that were hand selected and kind of the chosen ones.
And yet the popularity for the same people just keeps moving forward and forward and forward. I mean, like, I don't know if you watched. I watched Beast Games. I watched it intently on Amazon, and it was amazing how many people I recognized from prior videos on there.
Oh yeah, and that's a whole part of the whole game. Is it's like that network of insiders and the people that you recognize from other YouTube channels. That's all part of that cross pollination in the algorithm. They want every single one of those other YouTubers to go back to their own audiences and onto TikTok and onto Instagram and talk about how they were on Beast Games on the upcoming Netflix show. It's like free advertising. Everybody wants to shout out how they were on TV. So they go back and tell everybody to watch the show. So now it's like, that's why the whole major networks they have to play along, because you have people like Mr. Beast and KSI and iShowSpeed and these guys, they're pulling numbers on their videos and their live streams that are dwarfing major networks. And so these major networks have to find ways to like sneak them in to get a cameo in a movie or to include them in their TV commercial during the Super Bowl halftime or whatever, or they're not going to get any views because the old draw of numbers that used to come from Hollywood is not there anymore. It's coming from independent creators. The independent social media content creators have basically taken over those numbers. There was a moment, Dave, back when I was doing this as a family with my wife and kids, where we got invited to go sit and watch and do behind the scenes stuff for the TV show Dancing with the Stars. And while we were sitting there, my wife looked up the numbers on how many views the show Dancing with the Stars got. And she leaned over into my ear back then and she was like, we actually get more views than this show does on our YouTube channel. And that like blew my mind, that this whole Hollywood production with like hundreds of people involved and all this money in a whole studio in California was getting less views per video than me and my wife and kids at home were getting. And so, yeah, they've had to adapt to all of that. They've had to look that in the face and deal with it.
Well, the interesting part about it is, YouTube stars are bigger than Hollywood stars. I mean, you look at what, totally off topic, but what WWE is doing now. They've got Speed in there. They've got KSI. They've got Logan Paul. Logan Paul was barely a wrestler, and they put a title belt on him, because they knew it would be good.
Yeah, it's 100% all about the spectacle and drawing the views. It's worth it to them to give him the belt and to throw him in there and to make him a star, because they know that he's going to hit the numbers by himself. When he goes into the ring and is there, he's going to sell more tickets and draw more viewers out of that younger crowd, those teenagers that idolize him. Like your son that wants to be a YouTuber, that's what he wants to do. He's living the dream. It's literally like he's living like a real life action character from some comic book or something. He's hitting every bucket list you can imagine. His brother's going in and fighting Mike Tyson, and he's going in and doing pro wrestling, and they're just going to jump topics. That's why you see Logan jumping in on the UFO videos and everything, is because they're just going down a checklist of all their hopes and dreams and trying to do everything on their list.
Well, we're going to get heavily into the UFO side of this whole entire topic with YouTube influencers, because YouTube influencers are coming out of the woodworks to talk about UFOs. And the UFO community, I should say the UAP community, is all over it. They are all over it. And we need to talk about this, because the people who are doing radio shows, regular YouTube podcasts, or podcasting on this, they're scraping the barrel. Yet these YouTubers who know literally zero about our subject are getting all the big interviews. They're getting all the big names. They're getting all the hype around it. And is that healthy for our subject matter? YouTube influencer Carl Crusher is here. You could go onto his Carl Crusher YouTube site. He's got 3 million plus subscribers. This guy knows what he's talking about. That's why we want to talk to him about this important topic tonight on Spaced Out Radio. That's a good start.
Yeah. Roll right through it. It's an interesting thing. It's changed so much over the years. It's hard to keep track of it and keep up with it. That's like a loaded question when you're like, is it hard to get started on YouTube? I'm like, man, I don't know. I see these like 13-year-old kids get on their phone and they make videos on CapCut and stuff. And I'm just like, maybe I'm just getting old.
Oh, dude, my son, he's not really into it right now. He goes at about 6-7 month spurts of doing things. So right now we're still in hockey. And prior to that, he was making his own videos. And I was looking at these and I'm like, how are you doing this?
I know.
He's like, oh, I just downloaded this free app and it lets me edit these videos and I figured it out. And like, oh, you're so smart.
I know. I remember when I was trying to learn how to do chroma key, like green screen editing to crop out the background behind me. And I spent like weeks and weeks trying to practice that frame by frame and how to do like lightsaber effects and things to make it look real. And now all that stuff is just like literally built into the filters on TikTok. You can go in and just like click a couple things and render it out. Next thing you know, it's like you got lasers shooting out of your eyes and green screen and fake background and everything. And it's all just automated like crazy. So,
and it's really marketed to the younger people.
Yeah, it's smart for that too. Yeah. Trying to market to us is foolish because a lot of us just like drop to the wayside as this goes on and unfolds. They always want to get that fresh crowd that's trendy, you know. I definitely am not carrying any trends anymore. I'm stepping into my role as being like the old wizard, an old sage. That's the other thing we could talk about too, is that idea of that influx of YouTubers into the ufology is interesting.
Well, I think it's a topic that nobody's talking about. Nobody.
Yeah, why it happened and why certain people.
Yeah. We'll get into it. We shall get into it.
Yes, we will.
It's gonna be good. Gonna be good.
You're only getting 4 hours of sleep tonight, my man.
That's about it.
It always takes me like a couple of hours after I do these interviews for my subconscious to unwind, even though I'm really relaxed. Whenever I get done with them, it's like deep down, part of me's been running a marathon or something on the inside.
You're in Utah. Are we on the same timeline? Or are you an hour ahead? Are you a mountain?
It's 10:30 p.m. here.
Okay, so you're an hour ahead. Well, if you're awake at 4 a.m, I'm always up for a phone call while I'm driving.
There you go.
You know, so
yeah, I'm up a lot. Yeah,
I can't wait. There's something about driving through the mountains, like, because I have to cross what we call the Fraser Canyon, which would be, you know, where I live. I'm settled right in between the Rockies and the Cascade Mountains.
Yeah.
So going through the mountains
Beautiful.
Tomorrow, I get to watch the sunrise. So I'm pretty excited about that.
Do you like driving at night, or is it hard for you to stay awake?
I love driving at night.
I do too.
Yeah.
I come awake in the evening. It's like I have to really fight to get on a regular sleep schedule for sure. Yeah, like I have to around this time, usually like 10 o'clock at night or whatever. That's when all my ideas start coming to me. That's when I'm finally in the mood to work. Then pretty soon it's like 4 in the morning, and I'm like, oh shit, I better go to bed.
Oh, buddy, you and I are speaking the same language right now.
Yeah.
No, we really are. We've got about 45 seconds.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do when you drive? Do you just listen to podcasts the whole way?
I will listen to music because they're just downloaded music because when you go through the mountains, there's not a lot of radio signal.
Yeah, you lose it, then you're bored.
Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of dead areas. So I
Right.
just crank my tunes, I'll have my window open, singing away,
Nice.
enjoying exactly what I want to do, man.
Get the cold air coming in the window.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Here we go. Here we go with the second half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you for joining us wherever you are on this great planet. Hope you're coming. Get into tonight's show with Carl Crusher, moving on up here momentarily. But first, we want to remind all of you that if you missed portions of this show or others, you can always check out our free archives on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Here we go. Carl Crusher, he is a YouTube influencer. He goes to look for mysteries and mayhem around Skinwalker Ranch. He finds UFOs. He finds weird areas. If there's a portal near him, he's going to go try find it. He loves the weird and strange, and we love him here as a good friend of this show. Carl, welcome back.
Hey, thanks, Dave. It's good to be back again.
Before we get into it, I got to mention this comment by listener Trebor on our YouTube channel. Says, I had a scary dream last night. Dave was taking a hot bath with a gray. Oh, my.
He says that was, why is that scary? That isn't that like one of the best dreams ever, Dave?
I don't want to be having a bath with no gray. Maybe some of them, those gorgeous long-haired Pleiadians.
There you go.
Some of those. But not when it comes to the grays. No, not a fan of that. All right, let's move on here because we're going to get into a very important subject that literally extremely few people in the UFO/UAP world are talking about these days. And that is YouTube influence on UFOs and UAP and what is going on in this world. Now, if we go back in time a few years ago, when Jeremy Corbell put out his Bob Lazar movie, he made a very controversial move by putting Bob Lazar on with a UFO channel called Secure Team 10 that had 2.1 million subscribers, but was also known very well to put on fake videos. And this was a move that upset a lot of people in the UFO world at that time because we weren't really UAP back then. And I remember asking Jeremy, why did you do it? I mean, there were so many questions that Bob Lazar needed to be asked, but it was like putting a Harvard scholar having an interview with a 7-year-old kid asking him, do you give your cat treats? I mean, that's kind of the questioning that it was. And Jeremy gave me a good response on this show. He said, Dave, I'm a movie director. How do I turn down an interview that's going to have 2.1 million people see my video? And I couldn't argue with that. I couldn't argue with it. And that's where I think it slowly started because Jeremy started paying attention to a lot more YouTube channels, and the bigger they were, the minute they seemed to start showing interest in ufology, bam, he was their best friend. If you had 7 figures in subscribers on your YouTube channel, he was going to be your friend, and you were going to get the inside scoop. You were going to get interviews with him. Not saying that he doesn't do interviews elsewhere, but it was a smart, shrewd business move. But if we look at it now, we see ufology really starting to take a great divide, where there's a lot of people who have YouTube channels. There's tens of thousands out there, Carl, speaking on our subject, and that's just in North America alone. And yet there's some names that have never been associated with ufology or uapology, and now they're getting whoever they want. What's your thoughts on this?
It's a fascinating topic because it does seem like when you pay attention, like there is sort of a stage that's set. And at certain times and certain periods, a particular person or character is pushed to the front of the stage, or they choose to step to the front of the stage, or it's their turn up there in the spotlight. And so it's like there's a certain wave of it. At one point, it'll be like Stephen Greer will come out and he's the face of disclosure. And then Greer kind of will run his course and start to run out of relevance. And then he's pulled back behind the curtain. And then you see Jeremy Corbell steps forward and he's running the show for a minute. And then it's almost like that torch or that baton is passed on to the next showrunner that steps under the spotlight and steps forward. And they're very good behind the curtain, just like in politics, at pretending like they're not all friends. And they're even on the surface and in their videos will be outspoken against each other, or even say, oh, they're on a false agenda, or they'll accuse each other of different things to appear on the surface to be enemies. But really behind the curtain, when you look, they're in all these pictures having dinner together in private meetings and such, and so if you're really following closely who these characters are, it's really not a huge crowd when it comes to who's really close to the story. And it's a small stage, and behind the curtain and who's moved out under the spotlight seems very controlled. Like if you go back, you've got the radio announcers out of Las Vegas. Well, his name is just totally drawn a blank right now, but George Knapp has filled his shoes. But before him, it was it George Norrie? Yeah, or the Art Bell show. So different people would be the face or the voice of radio or media when it comes to this UFO topic. And it's like that torch gets passed on from different select individuals. And if you follow the story, it's like a tight knit group of individuals that it moves through. And something happened along that lines when Jeremy Corbell stepped forward, because you're right. Like he's a media guy. If you go to his website and go back in his archives, right before he was doing UFO stuff, before that, he was like over in Europe doing documentaries about swimsuit models and stuff, like completely unrelated. And then all of a sudden he's there with George Knapp and he's the face of ufology. He's all over the place. And then next it's like Tom DeLonge steps forward and he's in the spotlight and he's actually a star. He's actually, and what do? They try to form a whole media company that makes music videos and movies and cartoons and all of that. And then after that is this huge wave of social media creators, like anybody and everybody. And I think there's two reasons for that, because I think Tom DeLonge opened the door because he's like a rock star. And now he's in charge of all this UFO stuff and the stories. But at the same time, you have the UFO topic, let's be honest, is low hanging fruit. When you've got things happen like COVID and people are forced to work at home and stuff, there's a lot of people that are suddenly at home and they want to start a podcast or they want to go out and do YouTube videos, but they don't have any knowledge or expertise or any kind of a niche or genre that they know a lot about. And so UFOs or Bigfoot is a really easy topic, on the surface, because you think, oh, there's no answer. It's like ghost hunting. We can go out and make videos forever and never get to the end of it, And so it seems really easy, but honestly, it's a really convoluted topic when you get into it, and it's not so easy. But yeah, I think there was a huge shift where suddenly people quit looking to the government, and now even people in the government are turning around, like social media content creators and people doing civilian efforts are going to be a big part of the effort moving forward. And so it makes you wonder which way the information is really flowing right now.
I have a conspiracy theory I want to push by you. And this is my own thinking. I've talked to a couple other people about this, in private conversation behind the scenes. About 3-4 years ago, multi-billionaire Peter Thiel, owner of a defense company called Palantir, formerly the owner of PayPal, along with Elon Musk. That's where he started and made his money. He financed a UFO team called Enigma Labs, run by Alice Smith out of the UK. The head office is in New York, in a condominium above I believe a sausage meat packing store. And it is alleged that he put between $5 and $8 million in between this. And Enigma Labs really hasn't taken off. But then all of a sudden, this gentleman comes out of nowhere named Jesse Michaels. He came out right after David Grush came out, and this YouTuber named Jesse Michaels comes out, and immediately one of his first big interviews is David Grush. Nobody in the UFO world, outside of maybe Ross Coulthart, had talked to David Grush, and this guy comes from nowhere to interview him. We find out later that Jesse made his money working for Peter Thiel. Jesse, on his resume that has been put out there, is also considered a social media influencer expert. Now, all of a sudden, you see all these whistleblowers coming out, and where do they go? They go to Jesse Michaels. Then all of a sudden, you see Chris Ramsey, good guy, 7 million subscribers. He starts talking about UFOs the last couple of years, and he starts getting picked up for it and getting big named interviews that most shows cannot get. It's been in the field 6 months. And then you see Chris Ramsey show up at the last hearings in Washington, D.C., and who is he sitting beside? Jesse Michaels. Then you see Logan Paul about a year ago talking about a UFO video that he secretly recorded from a guy who didn't want to release the video.
And who did he go with to get that? Remember, it was James Fox.
It was James Fox, wasn't it? So you have him get involved with James Fox, Dr. Stephen Greer.
Yep.
And now he's involved with Jake Barber. Well, who's been pushing Jake Barber's interviews? Jesse Michaels.
Right.
Julian Dory, 1 million subscribers or near 1 million subscribers. Same thing. Sean Ryan, same thing. How is he getting them? Joe Rogan, well, Joe Rogan's the biggest podcast in the world. Obviously, he can get anybody he wants. I mean, if he called up right now and said, Carl, come on the show, or Dave, come on the show, what are we doing? We're going, yeah, absolutely. Because then our show would go from, not bottom of the barrel, because I think we're a little bit higher than that, but it would take off. It would explode in a good way. So you have all of these people who seem to be tied to Jesse Michaels, who seem to be tied to Peter Thiel, who seems to be tied to wanting to invest in the UFO world. What's your thoughts on that?
And we've talked a little bit about the Rumble app too. Peter is also one of the founders and big investors, along with JD Vance, into the Rumble app. And it's part of, and this is all speculative, and I don't know this for fact, but I think it's all a part of this whole move in this plan, basically to shift and control the way that the story is told, for sure. Like, they have to be able to move it to an app that they can control, and the apps that they don't control, like, let's say they have to start one like Rumble to compete with YouTube, but then even on YouTube they have to have plants on YouTube that are dominating the numbers. And so they can definitely orchestrate all that. And when you have the kind of money to push the algorithm in the direction that you want to, you can direct it just like a sailboat. So you can take new channels. You can take someone like the Haktua girl or whatever, and you can throw her in the mix of something. And next thing you know, superstar, and it's almost like they just literally came out of left field, out of nowhere. And they're starting to actually get sniffed out and get accused of being industry plants and such, because it's so obvious. But to the general people that aren't following along and paying attention to the characters and the people involved, they're never going to pick up on it. You're never even going to catch the fact that, Jesse Michaels is the same podcast that you watched 3 weeks ago. A lot of people just catch little clips on TikTok and they don't even connect the dots. But if you're into ufology and you're following it, a lot of people are like, what is going on here? But even more so, if you're one of the content creators and you've been in the game and you've been hustling, you've been trying to get these interviews for like a decade, and then you see them just get scooped up by these other people and other channels, it does definitely make you wonder. There's a lot of like money and influence and secret deals that go on behind the curtain, like I said, and who gets pushed out under the spotlight at the front of the stage is like a careful, controlled thing. And we talked about last time I was on here, even like it's this total paradox that I constantly have to deal with, because on the one hand, like Jacob Barber, for example, his whole entrance onto the stage, I've had conversations with some of my friends, like it almost feels like Jacob Barber and his team took the stuff that I was doing with my crew on YouTube like 4 years ago, and now they're coming out on Ross Coulthart and they're talking about how they were doing it as part of Delta Force and Green Beret teams in Nevada. So now I'm like, was I really right about all that? Like this idea that you could do meditation to capture UFOs or communicate with them and see them? Or was I really right about that and they are really doing that in these secret programs? Or were they just watching my YouTube and they're literally copying what we're doing because it's trendy and people find it believable, and they're learning from what I'm doing in my explorations and my adventures and stuff to like kind of emulate me, but they have to control it. So they got to jump in front of that story. They've got to put their person there that has the credentials. And then suddenly he's got the spotlight and getting all the views, and he's the face of that whole story. It's definitely not me. They do the same thing at Mount Wilson Ranch when we did the Beyond Skinwalker Ranch story. They immediately planted Andrew Bustamante in, made him the star of the show. He's an ex-CIA agent. And he's the one that went on all the podcasts and did all the tours and did all the interviews. It definitely wasn't me, right? But I don't get jealous about that. To me, I'm on this like personal quest. I'm just like, when that all happens, it just means I'm close to something real, or I'm on to something. If they have to send somebody to try and like clone swap me, then I must be onto something that they have to try and control. So maybe I'm right.
Former UFC lightweight champion George St. Pierre is now getting into it, all because he put out an interesting tweet about UAP. And then all of a sudden, the YouTube social media horde ran at him and said, why don't you join us? Why don't you join us? Why don't you join us? This is a guy, yes, he's had some experiences that he's talked about, out-of-body experiences, so on and so forth. I believe he's even seen a UFO too. But all of a sudden, he's doing major interviews with this clique about this subject. We have reached out to him. No response. It just seems like what we are seeing with this clique forming on the YouTube side, it's an old media adage, Carl, that if you control the medium, you control the message. And I don't think in the desperation for disclosure that many people have, I don't think they're even paying attention that they could potentially be being played because the message is being filtered down like a martini glass, where all the YouTube channels, all the podcasts are up high, but all the information is at the bottom.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. And it's honestly kind of the big problem right now. And it's a problem like that at several levels. And I know this because even like I work with Dr. Jim Segala on this modular sensor study that we're doing to try and capture evidence of the phenomena. And even though Dr. Segala, he does have government clearances, we basically work. I am a civilian. I don't have any government clearances. Don't work for any agencies. I'm just a YouTuber. But with Dr. Segala and we're doing everything at a civilian effort. And when he takes his reports and the data and goes back to the Pentagon and goes back to Washington, D.C., we're all out here in the audience and we're all looking at the government and we're looking at the Pentagon to control the story and to know the science and to tell us what's going on. Like they're the authorities. And so we're all like, when is the Pentagon going to release some statement? When is the president going to come out and disclose UFOs and everything? But what happens is Dr. Segala goes to Washington and they're asking him, what did we find? What did Carl find when he was out in the field? What does his brainwave data show? How come his gamma waves are fluctuating? And they're asking Dr. Segala and I, as civilians, what's happening at Skinwalker Ranch and what's happening in these places, because these guys are in suits and ties in these offices all day pushing papers and talking to lobbyists and stuff. And they're not the ones out there actually doing it. So they have to find like scientists and people that are actual experiencers and people who are willing to do it and look at them. So it's so messy right now. And so there's tons of gaps and opportunity for people to step into that spotlight and to control the narrative through private agencies, through companies, corporations that even just have marketing programs that they want to run. Could be as simple as that. Like, Northrop Grumman wants to control a certain narrative about how this story goes and how to hide their technology and patents. So they push somebody out into UFO disclosure, and next thing you know, they're manipulating everybody from Congress down to podcasters. And we have to be savvy enough. I mean, this is why I go out on my own and I try to look for myself. That's why I don't sit and wait for other people to tell me, because it's just too messy right now. You have to look through, see what all the common threads are and what's real and what's not. And then for me, I got to go and see for myself. So I go out and try it for myself and try to prove it, because you don't know who to trust right now.
Mm-hmm. 90 seconds to go. I feel really sorry for a lot of people in the UFO world who have worked really hard to bring credibility to this field, and they are being pushed to the side because of this new wave of influence. You go back 7-8 years ago, people knew who Grant Cameron was. They knew who Richard Dolan was. They knew who Jim Mars was. They knew who Paul Hellyer was. They knew who Stanton Friedman was, or Linda Moulton Howe. I mean, she a little bit of controversy there right now, but they knew who Melinda Leslie was, or Lorian Fenton. There was a big clique of giant names in this field. And you look at today's ufology, outside of maybe one or two of those names, they don't know who the hell any of those people are, because it's moved. And I feel sorry for those people who've dedicated their last 30, 40, 50 years to this subject and are being cast aside for a new wave of AI type of ufology.
Yeah, and I think that it's crazy because on the one hand, it's sad because you see these people that planted those seeds get pushed to the side. But on the other hand, it's also what we all hope for, as we wanted this topic to come out of the shadows and become mainstream and to not be taboo to talk about where you get ridiculed anymore. And so we kind of have to take the bad with the good and adjust to these growing pains, because they're sort of out of our control and we just have to adjust to them.
Carl, I'm going to get you to hold on right there because we are going to go to break here at the top of the hour. The one thing I love about Carl, he's always watching the clock. He knows exactly when it's time to cut off his sentence and go to commercial. Carl Trust channel. Make sure you go hit subscribe. Bring that down. This is Spaced Out Radio with host Dave Scott. Carl, we got about 6 minutes here. I'm going to take a quick break. I'm just going to put you in the green room, okay?
Cool.
All right. Be right back, everybody. Every time I go outside now, I have to watch for bears.
Mhm. That sounds smart.
Yeah. Yep.
Watch
Thank
for
goodness I got a
bears.
gate in my yard that keeps the bears out, but I still worry about it.
Where you got black bears that come up around?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're like big raccoons, only they're mean.
They're cute. I love black bears.
They are cute, but they're yeah, they don't care about you. Yeah, that's cool.
All right. Still waiting for our first super chat of the night. That's how we keep this show going. And you can shop at our Spaced Out Radio store. We do not have ugly swag, people. No ugly swag, so make sure you check it on out. Eli McInnes, good morning to you. All right. We got about 30 seconds here, my friend.
Cool.
Awesome show so far.
Thanks. Yeah. Pretty easy. There's always a lot to talk about.
Oh, yeah, man. Oh, yeah. It's good times when you're on the air, my friend. It's just such a relaxed conversation.
It is. It feels really natural. It's one of the ones that I don't get nervous before. I just pop in. It flows really easy. I feel like it's just like as if we were hanging out.
Here we go with hour number 2 of Spaced Out Radio tonight. Is YouTube influence good for ufology? My name is Dave Scott. We're going to get right into it here with Carl Crusher, 3 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. But first, we want to say hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Nipitatum. Nipitatum is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Man with 3 million subscribers on his YouTube channel, Carl Crusher is his name and the name of his channel, as he delves into the weird and strange. But we're talking about a topic tonight that nobody's talking about in this field. We're seeing YouTube influencers take over ufology. It's never happened before. We don't know how to react, but we're learning about it tonight from Carl. And Carl, thank you so much for taking on this topic with us.
I appreciate it. I feel like I have kind of a background. I'm sort of one of them. I am a YouTuber that sort of stepped into ufology, but I kind of had a leg in the race all along. It was just a change to do it full time, but it is definitely fascinating to see people stepping in out of thin air and then taking all the spotlight.
I will agree with you, but I'll disagree with you on your honest point there on one reason. You're developing your own content. You're not jumping into the fray trying to move disclosure forward. These new YouTubers, whether it's Logan Paul, Jesse Michaels, whoever it may be, who've come out of nowhere on this subject, like Logan Paul has been around for YouTube for, I think, a dozen years. Okay, but it's only recently that he's jumped into the UFO fray. And the point that I'm getting at is these guys, many of them have never seen a UFO. They just find the subject interesting. They just find it like they're fascinated by it. And that's great because their market opens up so many different people to this subject, which is what this subject has always craved. But for you, you're out there, you're creating your own content, you're doing investigation, you're doing something completely different. So that's where I disagree with the way you're handling it, and I hope you don't mind that.
Yeah, I mean, that was important to me. I think that was right from the beginning one of the things that I saw that was wrong. And even when I wasn't doing it full time, when I initially started just going out and filming series, searching for Bigfoot and things like that, my whole point in doing that was that I didn't want to be just somebody that sat at home and pretended like I went to all these places and talked about them. I think it's fine to do that. I think it's fine to report on places, but there's been like people that have written several books about Skinwalker Ranch that have never actually been there. And I've actually been there several times, and each time I've been there, if you added it all up, it was less than 4 hours worth of time total inside the gates. And I have never written a book about it. But it's been important to me to have that credibility, to make sure that if I'm going to talk about stuff, that I actually go out and I test it. And I'm glad that I did that, because even though right now, like my YouTube channel, if you go and look at it, my numbers are low and they're struggling. But as far as like my integrity, my own soul, and the people that do follow me and are close to my work, they actually trust me, and that matters to me. And the fact that I work with Dr. Segala, and that the work that we're doing does go back to the Pentagon sometimes, and it does go back to Congress. And the fact that one of my best friends, like a brother to me, is Chris Bartell. You know, he worked at Skinwalker Ranch for over 8 years and is a federal employee, and worked at Area 51 as a security official out there. And he's one of my best friends. And it's like having these relationships and the integrity and having the experience of actually having boots on the ground. That's what Chris says. He's like, if you want anybody to take you serious that knows what's going on the inside of these programs, you have to have boots on the ground. If you go look on my Instagram, the one thing that Chris Bartell comments the most is when I post something, he's like, boots on the ground, brother, because he's always reminding me to get out there and actually go to places and to see for myself. Because if you want the validation, that's what you're going to have to do. You're never going to get it listening to other people. But there is dozens and dozens of people, probably hundreds now, that have stepped out that take over the topic. Like right now, I know I have a whole lifetime of experiences, and I've been to all kinds of different places and been there in person, been to Project Hestilin, been to Skinwalker Ranch, been to Mount Wilson, all of these places in person, and done research there. And then somebody can pop up on TikTok and they're just standing in their kitchen, and within 60 seconds get 1 million views. And then you look at my video where I'm interviewing Dr. Segala and we're doing real disclosures showing real data, and I struggle to break 1,000 views, you know? And so that it really does make you wonder when you talk to certain people about if there is certain agendas. And this kind of stuff is easy for an algorithm to do, or for an artificial intelligence, you know, that can think at tens of thousands of frames per second, where we're stuck at like 60 frames a second. And so an algorithm can easily track all the uploads and decide who's going to get favoritism and who's not. When you upload a content or a video, it can read your face and what you're saying and everything that you're posting, and almost like it's moving in slow motion, can determine what to do with that content. And so if they decide, if the powers that be decide they don't want your stuff to get seen, it's not going to get seen, you know. And you just have to be resilient and forge ahead and decide that you're going to go out and do the work and spread your work out over the different apps to kind of stand against that. So I post everywhere. I post YouTube, Patreon, Rumble, TikTok, Instagram. I spread my stuff out everywhere. So it's like the Hydra. When they chop off the head of one snake, I'm growing another one somewhere else all the time. That's how I've stayed alive.
I'm going to start off this question with a comment from Lenda in our chat room. Lenda says, I'm sorry, but hijacking UFO or Sasquatch or paranormal isn't cool for me. And there's a lot of people who've been following this subject for a long time, Carl, who don't like the way it is going. They don't like the way that, you know, these trendy type people are out there talking about this, where people are used to who they like. And they want to hear, say, Carl Crusher interview Jake Barber, or they want to hear Dave Scott interview David Grush, and you don't get that opportunity. You have to go where it's almost like where they are allowed to go.
Yeah.
Is this healthy for the direction of the subjects that we love?
I personally don't think so. I haven't seen it be healthy for the topic. I think it's caused a lot of convoluted confusion about the topic, and I think you're right. The what the actual people that are into this subject that have been following ufology for a long time, I think everybody in that boat is frustrated with this, because what happens is it's like all of a sudden it becomes this popular topic. It becomes mainstream. There's drones all over New Jersey. And just because there's like some heat in the algorithm and there's some money to be made off of talking about the topic, you have a whole bunch of people jumping on the bandwagon that have nothing to do with it, that are suddenly, talking about the drones over New Jersey, and they literally know nothing about it, and they're just talking in little riddles and circles around, but they'll get millions of views. But that's just sadly, in a lot of ways, the way that society is right now. Is it's social media is crammed full of brain rot content. We're trying to go up against skibbity toilet stuff. It's like never going to make sense to us. We could go out and work for a month and put together a whole documentary series and try to post it and have actual footage of orbs and UFOs and really mind-blowing, compelling evidence, and release it. And the truth is that some pop culture event could happen in news, and one celebrity gets in a divorce with another or gets caught up in a scandal, and that is going to bury any work that you've ever done. And that's such an easy game to play, and people fall for it so easy because they're just this swipe along mentality, that to try and actually engage with your core followers, you have to tap into what the questions that they really want to get answered, and have to be willing to provide it. And or like that's all I'm trying to do is like if people can't trust the government and there's this whole confusion, then that's why I'm like, well, I'm going to go see for myself. If we can't tell what's going on between Jacob Barber and all the people in the media, then that's what I find my niche is, and what my whole goal is I'm going to try to go there independent, without any contracts, sometimes crawl through the fence against the rules and see for myself, and then come back and tell everybody, and try not to get in trouble when I do that. So that's kind of where I've found my role in all of this. But it is totally flooded, and this whole topic has been completely infiltrated and hijacked with people that just suddenly got a ton of views. The algorithm latched onto them, and so now they're a UFO guy or they're a conspiracy guy or whatever, and they literally just tried it as a fluke because they've never really done it before. They just kind of got lucky with a couple of videos. And that is definitely frustrating for people that are trying hard. It's very, very frustrating. I talk to a lot of people behind the scenes, even people inside that work at programs and facilities and locations. And they're just as frustrated and disgruntled that, like, they can try to post a blog post or get some information out there, and it literally goes nowhere and nobody sees it. And I think we're getting to this point to where we are going to have to really rely upon our crowd and our fan base. Like all of your followers here at Spaced Out Radio, if you want to get Jacob Barber on here as a guest, they're all going to have to circle around you like a tribe and go repost your Twitter posts on X. When you reach out to Jacob Barber and say, hey, I need you on my show, like there needs to be like 500 or 1,000 of your Spaced Out Radio followers that are in the chat right now that have the passion to support you to retweet that to where it gets their attention and where they can't avoid it. And that's hard to do because everybody's swamped right now. Everybody's tapped out and just trying to pay their bills. And it's a big ask to ask people to really go behind the scenes and work for you. But it just depends. I think a lot of people out there are experiencers with this. And if you're putting out good content and doing good interviews and forging ahead, I think it is possible. But right now, the odds are definitely against us. It feels like climbing up up a mountain or Mount Everest trying to get anything seen or noticed at all, even when it's right on the nose.
As we go down that path, many people will say, look, we're opening this subject up to new generations. We're opening up this subject to a new reality where people are buying into it, because this younger 30 and under crowd who follows a lot of these people, who relies on social media for a lifestyle, they're hearing about it maybe for the first time, and they're engaging and they're liking what they're seeing. And so what's wrong with opening this up to a whole new generation?
Yeah, I think that's inevitable. I think that we're going from the generation where there used to just be like 5 channels on the TV, and a lot of us had to get up and go to the TV and turn a knob to change those channels. And now all of that has completely bypassed, and where everybody's just streaming content straight to their phones and right into their glasses and onto their screens constantly. And the whole thing has inverted to where they're not just streaming it and watching it, but everybody's creating it. So it's so trend based that, like, if any hot piece of UFO news comes out, then you're going to get an entire swarm that jumps onto that news, and they're going to gather around it. Like, I posted a whole video where I kind of talked about, I was like, do you remember when you were a kid, were you pulled out of elementary school and had a hearing test done where they had you listen to these tapes with these headphones on, and then they had you play with yarn and check these shapes and colors? And I kind of threw this out there, and it went like viral because it triggered a lot of suppressed memories that people had about getting tested for the gifted and talented program in their schools. But immediately after that, you could see 10,000 copycats make the same video that, basically copied exactly my formula. Were you pulled out of class when you were a kid? And they'll get way more views than I do, even though they're just kind of stealing my idea. And on the one hand, it's kind of like, it can be frustrating because you feel constantly buried underneath the swarm of media and content creators that are just jumping onto viral trends whenever they see something going. But at the same time, what a powerful way to get something out there in a flood that can't be stopped. A way to get a viral response out there that like the government or people trying to suppress you can't hardly stop. It's almost like the algorithm has to shut your video down or turn the monetization off, and they have to get extreme, in order to sometimes shut you down when it gets to that level. But once the cat's out of the bag and there's 10,000 people copying your video, then it's in everybody's mind and they're thinking about it. And that's the reason why, in a good way, on the good hand of all of this, people are understanding the connection between consciousness and meditation, and they're looking at ufology in a completely different tone. Because before that, everybody was looking at UFOs like they came from outer space and all that, and they were nuts and bolts, and that was the only conversation being had. But because of this whole flood of information and everybody jumping on, I think it's also, it can be a good thing and a bad thing. But I'm trying to embrace it and just trying to use that to my advantage. But it can be quite a headache when you feel like anything that you do, people are just going to steal and run with it. That's definitely going to happen. So the idea is, like, how can you use that to your advantage instead of let it frustrate you?
But it also, if we get back to the message with 5 minutes to go here before we go to break, it also controls what stories come out. This new wave is all about the military. It's all about the Pentagon. It's all about, commercial airlines. I mean, putting almost like a fear factor that many of these incidents are scary and dangerous and could be potentially life-threatening. That's what we're seeing. We're not hearing from, everybody else for the last 60 years who's been able to summon UFOs, like we talked about last week. We're hearing about Jake Barber's psionics, like he's the only one, the Skywatcher crew are the only ones who have the ability to do this. And to me, that sets a tone of erasing the past for what we're seeing in the future here and in the present day. Your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really difficult. It can kind of shift the narrative. We're even seeing them come out and say, we're going to tell you there's 5 different classes of UFOs. There's physical saucers, there's manta ray shaped, there's jellyfish shaped, there's spheres, there's 8 gons and eggs. And they're going to go through a list of classification. And it's the same thing as when like Lou Elizondo comes forward and says, let's talk about the 5 observables, and it goes down to the same thing, is it makes it really easy to just have one person step into the spotlight and basically propose a list of criteria for identification. And then when everybody goes out to do their own research or independent research, they're now subconsciously filtering everything that they see in film through that filter. And they're looking for jellyfish now, and they're looking for eggs, and they're looking for spheres when they weren't before. And so it does create this whole situation where you have someone that is an insider or an expert stepping out of the shadows and suddenly getting the spotlight. And then they say, this is what's really going on. And on the one hand, it's what we're all waiting for. And because it's like, if it's true, this is what we've been waiting for, is confirmation of what they actually look like. How do you do it? How do you talk to them? Who are the people that have been doing it? Who are the actual experts that can tell us what's going on? And so when they actually come out and they do that, then we're disappointed and we're frustrated that now, well, they're the one that gets to tell the story. How come they're the one that gets all the attention, and how come they're the ones that gets to do it? Well, all that depends on whether they're lying or not. If they're lying, then shame on them for stepping in the spotlight, hogging the show, manipulating the narrative, and running a psyop on the American people and the world. But if they're actually telling the truth, then they're heroes, because they're stepping out and they're putting their necks on the line, and they're actually whistleblowing, and they're confirming a lot of the things, and they're moving that narrative forward and giving us a clearer picture of what is really going on. If they actually are experts and they have done this before and they know what they're talking about and it's real, then that's pretty mind-blowing. But if they are lying and manipulating us, then we are in a psyop. So that is the whole game here, is like, who do you trust and who don't you? It's difficult even for me. I know that one of Jacob Barber's psionic team members on his team is a personal friend of mine that I've gone out with several years ago and done psionic meditations with and summoned UFOs with. I've done it with him before, up around Skinwalker Ranch several years ago, and now he's on Jacob Barber's team. So I'm kind of like, I'm so torn. I don't know how deep the rabbit hole goes. Who's behind the Wizard of Oz's curtain and who's not? It's very messy to try and sort it out. But honestly, most of my friends that I have right now have worked in jobs or were in the military or worked at these different facilities in and out. And while they're working and functioning as civilians, a lot of them definitely could have inside knowledge. So I don't know. Who else is going to be qualified? Who are we expecting to come out and be the ones to tell us? What did we expect? And then when they do it, why are we frustrated? Because it's different than what we thought, and because it's not us? I don't know. It's a really tricky subject. And so I'm trying to look at all of it. And again, that's why it always boils down for me to just go out and try for myself and just see for myself what's really going on.
And I think that's the way the public would like it too, is some integrity within it. But when you're trying to erase history, which it seems like many of these guys are, even if they're not trying to do it directly, like we saw back in the day with Lou Elizondo saying ufology must die. Everybody remembers that. We'll get into it more as we come to break here at the bottom of the hour. Carl Crushers.
You're listening to Spaced Out Radio.
with your host, Dave Scott. And I think that's the reason why you all of a sudden see a lot of these attack channels popping up too.
Well, you keep talking about Peter Thiel, you're going to get us a visit from the Men in Black, Dave.
I'm hoping, you know, what's funny is every night I go on to this, I do a hit in Philadelphia on WPHT every night with this host named Walter Sterling. Now, Walter Sterling is like a 40-year career radio guy. And he used to work, like, run WABC's newsroom, and like he's been like a radio station consultant for years. Anyways, long story short, he brings me on for about 8 minutes every night, 8 to 10 minutes. And we were actually talking about the Men in Black tonight. And one of the things I said was, you know, I don't really believe that the Men in Black are actually out there, because a show like mine, my phone has never rang. My house has never got a knock on the door. My studio's never got a knock on the door. And trust me, I want that. I want to be able to say that I've had it. And I'm a little jealous. Maybe it's because I live in the middle of nowhere where Sasquatch roams. You know, I don't know.
My phone has rang, Dave. I've had my phone ring, and I've even, I don't know how much I want to say, but I have had to seek advice about some gang stalking, where I even had somebody repeatedly coming to my front door, banging on it and leaving different things on my doorstep, trying to scare me. But what's that?
Regarding what you're investigating?
I don't know. Like I had one call that was literally had hijacked a legitimate county police phone number, and they imitated. I got a phone call pretending from someone on the phone pretending to be a police officer, and they had questions for me because they claimed that there was a warrant for my arrest for some charges for online harassment. And so I was like, online harassment? Like, what would that even be for? And so they were trying to get all this, you know, ask me all these questions and all this stuff. And it's my intuition, my spidey sense was going bonkers. And so I ended up getting off the phone with him, and I called the county police number back. I looked it up myself and called it back, and they had no detectives, no warrant for my arrest, nothing about me at all. Nobody had called me from there. It was completely fake. And then every day for like 4 days, 5 days after that, people were coming up to my door, knocking on the door, banging on the door in the middle of the night. I ended up installing security cameras and stuff, but I can't think of anything else. I mean, unless it was like my ex-wife got mad or something and decided to hire somebody to harass me, but I can't think of literally any other reason other than the fact that, like, if you go look at my content, I have posted a lot of videos where I talk about the dark side of ufology and how, I mean, not only is there people embedded in this to control the narrative and talk about hijacking the story, we're talking about people using psionics and meditation to hijack actual interdimensional technology and to capture it, to abduct other entities, just like you would capture dolphins out of the ocean or something. And then even darker, the side where they were abducting and doing experiments on kids to try and understand psionics. There's a whole dark side to ufology and disclosure, and that's why they want somebody in the spotlight that they can control. When somebody like me goes to a place and starts sniffing around and I uncover child experiments, they don't want me talking about that, you know, that they were doing experiments on little kids. They don't want anybody talking about that. But you know, since I have now, like Jacob Barber and some of these guys have admitted that that was a thing, and that they're going to have to talk about it because the cat's out of the bag. But when people like me come out on podcasts and discuss it, what happens is my YouTube video gets throttled and gets suppressed. And then someone steps out in the controlled narrative into the spotlight And then they tell the story in this very, very edited, very watered down way that doesn't sound so bad. Like they were volunteers, you know, they weren't abducted, they were volunteers, you know. And so, yeah, it's super difficult to see how it all goes like that.
It is weird, man. It is totally weird. We got about 18 seconds. Thank you to Candace, Cosmic Joe, and Mel WD40 for the lube chat. Thank you very much for the love and support. And don't forget, we got great swag on our store at our website, spacedoutradio.com. Nothing ugly there, so make sure you check it on out. Here we go. Second half of Spaced Out Radio tonight. YouTube ufology. Is it good? Is it bad? Are they telling what we need? Carl Crusher is here with us. He's an expert on this subject. But before we bring Carl back on, we want to remind all of you that if you miss portions of this show or others, our archives are always free on YouTube or any major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. Carl Crusher is here, 3 million subscribers on his YouTube channel. So yes, he is an influencer talking about the weird and high strangeness. And this is what we love about him. He's a big fan of ours. We're a big fan of his. And we bring him back in right now. Carl, thank you for being here.
I appreciate it, Dave. Yeah, we've had an awesome conversation so far. And even though 2 hours can fly by, it feels like we still just barely scratched the surface of some of this stuff.
Let me ask you this regarding what we've been talking about the last hour and a half about YouTube influencers really taking over ufology. Do a lot of these guys, and I know you have put that conversation out there as well, but do a lot of these guys out there who are now taking on this subject, do they know anything about ufology? I don't say that to be insultive, because we know they must have an interest in it. It's not about the money, but an interest in the topic to see where it goes. But do they really know anything about the history of this topic, do you think?
I think certain of them definitely know a lot. Like you mentioned, Jesse Michaels, when I watch his podcast interviews, he's even had guests on there like Dr. Hal Puthoff and these like advanced physicists and theoretical physicists. And they'll get into these conversations that I know are going way over a lot of people's heads. And I'm like trying to keep up with it and follow the analogies and kind of following along. And Jesse will actually do a really good job, and he can weave together the history. And that might be part of why he's kind of the chosen one and why they sort of picked him to be the mouthpiece, is because the story that he's telling is right along the line, the story that they want to tell. And the way that he's able to have his knowledge base around that, it seems like almost prepared, like he has all the background information. Whereas people like me, when I go and look at the same stories and the same historical background, I dig up all these dark stories along the path. And sometimes those to me are like the juicy nugget that I'm excited to go make videos about even more than the UFOs. Like I might go over to a location because there's supposed to be a UFO buried underground. But then when I get there, I find out, oh, Howard Hughes back in the 1970s was doing a bunch of psychic experiments with radio waves on a bunch of kids, like scout camp kids that thought they were going to space camp or something. So I'll uncover like this dark secret about the story where everybody thinks it was a UFO event, but really it was like an experiment that was a part of MK Ultra. And so when you run into those details historically, like, oh, it was MK Ultra, it totally was a psyop, or this was human experimentation gone wrong over here, it wasn't UFOs. When you run into that, there's content creators like me that will go online and make videos and tell both sides of the story. I will go and try to dig up the radar array and show people what Howard Hughes did and talk about the child experiments. And I'll try to expose the dirty secrets, and bring them to the light so that everybody knows what's going on. But there's people involved in those programs that are still alive, that are still out there. People that worked in those programs and did those experiments that are still alive today, still doing interviews with people. And the last thing those guys want is for me to have 3 million subscribers and to be yapping on YouTube about the stuff they did back in the 80s. You know what I mean? So they would much rather pick somebody like Jesse that's kind of cherry picked, who's telling the story the way that they want it told and isn't asking any questions too hard, and is willing to kind of play ball with them. And that's who they're going to go to, is where they feel safe, where they feel it's controlled, where they're kind of the ones setting up even what questions they're going to get asked, whereas with me, they're not going to come onto my podcast because I'm going to ask them what happened to those kids. You know what I mean? They don't want anybody asking them those questions. And so that's why my content's going to struggle. And you're going to see people kind of cherry pick to be the mouthpiece. That's what I think. I think because the dark side of UFO disclosure is a lot darker than people want to admit. And as that's coming out, they really want to control the liability, because a lot of those old dogs, some of them that were involved in those programs are still alive. And there's even still pictures of them floating around out there connected to programs like MK Ultra and whatnot. And they don't want that stuff spread around. So, they shove all that through a funnel and control what gets out.
This kind of leads us to a different topic. And that is recently, and I talked about this last night on the show, Stephen Greenstreet from the New York Post made a post on X about Chris Mellon joining another UAP disclosure team. And one of the comments that he made was, and I don't agree with Stephen Greenstreet all the time, but I think the guy is very smart. I do. And I respect him as a journalist in regards to what he does. But one of the things that we do agree about is it's the same people joining all the same groups. I noticed this a couple of years ago, but a lot more people now seem to be really taking note that every group seems to have Gary Nolan, Avi Loeb from Harvard, Nolan's from Stanford, Chris Mellon, Lou Elizondo. Now it's David Grush. Hal Puthoff is in every group. Jim Semivan is in every group. Eric Davis is in every group. Leslie Keene is in every group. It seems like it's the same people in every group possible. How many groups and programs could these guys be a part of? I realize it's about money and funding. Okay, but how many groups can they now be a part of? Like I couldn't even spread myself that thin.
Yeah. When it goes back, you hit the nail right on the head where you said, it all goes down to the funding. That is a huge part of these speculative programs and why there's always this weird tight-knit group of people. The two core people, if you go back historically, that you're going to see as the center thread or the iron rod going through the middle of all of this is Eric Davis and Dr. Hal Puthoff. No matter where you go, if you go look at NASA with Werner von Braun, you're going to bump into them there. If you're going to go to Stanford and the psychic spy program for remote viewing, you bump into them there. If you go to Skinwalker Ranch and start looking at the history of the research during the Bigelow era, it was Hal Puthoff was the lead physicist there, and so was Eric Davis. And Jay Stratton got his experiences at Skinwalker, and now who's working with Tom DeLonge at To the Stars Academy and dealing with the metamaterial? Dr. Hal Puthoff. And where did all the research go from Skinwalker Ranch? It went with Dr. Hal Puthoff and Eric Davis to their lab in Texas. It didn't stay with Brandon Fugel. So you see this core group of people going all the way back, clear early into the 1960s, that basically picked up the torch after Project Blue Book, literally after J. Allen Hynek and the original deciders of this program that came out of Roswell, and how are we going to deal with this story and how are we going to control the narrative. It's been the same core group of scientists and media people at the core of this story controlling the narrative. And honestly, it's the same people that go back to Washington, D.C. And when even my colleagues that I work with day to day, every day on the MUPOS project is Dr. Jim Segala. When he goes back to report my research and what I do to Washington and to the Pentagon, guess who goes with him? Dr. Hal Puthoff, of all people. And that's who trained him. So even though I try to stay independent, I'm literally partners with someone that was trained by Hal. I don't know how to get around it, because everywhere you go, certain individuals are at the core of this story. And it's for either one of two reasons. Either they're the chosen ones that have been kind of picked to be the ones behind this, or it literally comes down to there's only a small group of people historically that have consistently put their life into this work. And so throughout time, over the course of the story, you're going to see those same people constantly coming up, and those same people getting revolved around in this story over and over and over again. But the Wilson Davis memo, the Davis part of the Wilson Davis memo was Eric Davis, and Hal Puthoff is mentioned in the Wilson Davis memo. And that whole thing made the New York Times and the New York Post and all of that. But when it comes down to like what Greenstreet's talking about, he's right. A lot of the reason Greenstreet's even sniffing around this is like 4 years ago, I was actually one of Greenstreet's anonymous sources feeding him information.
I didn't know that.
That's part of one of the reasons why my content is suppressed, is because I'm an agitator. You know, I don't just tell the story and the narrative that they want told. I am leaking information to Greenstreet and the New York Post, and I'm exposing how these same characters are involved everywhere you go, and to look at these guys and what they're doing. And it's because it's super confusing to try and know what their agendas are. And if they're just going from Rockefeller money to Brandon Fugel money, or to Bigelow money to Brandon Fugel money to Tom DeLonge money, and they're just jumping from funding to funding and trying to stay control of the story. Because if they can keep control of the story, then they can convince the government to keep giving them funding. And they, you know, and so there's part of that. But again, all this comes down to whether or not they're lying. If Hal Puthoff is really telling the truth about remote viewing and metamaterials, and if Eric Davis is telling the truth about all of this, about there being interdimensional and ultra terrestrials and how Skinwalker Ranch is real, if they're telling the truth, then it's amazing that we have a core group of people that have actually been devoted to this. And it means that the UFO programs were real. And it means that the crash recovery programs were real. And that's what we've been waiting for to know this whole time, is who are these guys and what did they do and where did they go? And we're finally getting answers to that. But on the other side, if they're lying, then man, like they've literally been psyoping us the whole time. And this whole thing has been an MK Ultra deal to try and control the story away from the experiencer and what's really going on. And so that's what it boils down to, is whether or not they're lying or not. And when you reach that conclusion, you have one of two choices. You either sit there and remain with that puzzle and try to sort it out and wait to find out what happens. Or like we keep talking about, or you decide that you're going to do little expeditions into your own backyard and look up at the sky for yourself and try to get your own answers. And that was the conclusion that I reached. And so, yeah, you see Mellon stepping forward, you see these same people. And at one hand, you're like, well, who else is qualified? What other political official is going to have the guts to stick their face on this topic and go on the news and talk about it, except for a few people that are willing to do it and even know what they're talking about. But on the trade-off to that is it's going to be the same faces every time, and you're never going to know if they're telling you the truth or not. It's literally, it's so hard to know, like what's going on, if they're putting on a mask or really telling the truth, or if they're just recycling the same stories among themselves behind the curtain and then sending someone out to take their turn in the spotlight.
No, and I think you hit that right on the head there. I mean, when you see Chris Mellon moving on, I mean, he's been a prominent voice. You see Lou Elizondo having secret talks last week with congressional members. You see all of this taking place. It really goes to show that there is some sort of narrative being played, and the people who have an interest in this subject, namely the public, really is the one getting ripped off, in my opinion, because they've had their experience. Maybe they've been abducted by aliens. Maybe they've had close encounters with UFOs or seen a fleet flying in the sky. Maybe they have paranormal activity in their house or whatever it may be. Those are the people who are having real effects happen to them. And yet they're being treated like it's swamp gas. Get out of here. We don't need you. We got bigger things to worry about. You know, I had scientist Rich Hoffman on this show back in May, a couple of years ago, literally state he wished all podcasters and people in ufology would get the hell out of the way and let the scientists do their job. Why? We're allowed to investigate. We're allowed.
Yeah.
It was quite a pompous comment, you know, but that's the attitude that is being taken by a lot of these scientists and officials who have government contracts, who work for the military, and so on. They don't want, you know, Julie in the chat room or Bob in the chat room to have a say in what happens here. They don't care about their experience. They don't care about your experiences, Carl. They sure as heck don't care about mine. We're just an annoyance. Would you agree with that, or is that a little over emotional?
No, that's honestly been my experience on a lot of different levels. And some of it's just a human reaction in society, sadly. Like I've gone to places and explored them for people trying to help out the property owners or the locals, you know, like looking for things. And I've actually discovered like ancient petroglyphs where nobody knew that they were there. And you would think that everybody would celebrate that, like, hey, Carl came up here and he put his expertise to work and he made some new discoveries that's going to push the research forward. But what I actually got was a bunch of people around the area emailing me pissed off and mad because they were like, I've been up there my whole life looking around, and now you come up there your first time on up that canyon and you're claiming to make all these discoveries, you know? And I'm like, geez, like, can I get a break? Like, I'm literally trying to do the right thing here and try to help people. And even when I come out with something, it's like everybody gets mad that they aren't the one that made the discovery, or they didn't take the picture of it first, or they didn't put it online. And so I get a mixed response. Some people are really happy about it, and other people are really upset about it whenever I make a finding. But there is something about it when like there's levels of territorial going on in this whole topic where people are trying to control certain narratives and trying to control stories and trying to control all of that. And I'll be honest, if you ask me where I think that controlling of the narrative is coming from, it's coming from private agencies, big corporations and companies that actually have special interests in keeping their secrets quiet and controlling the narrative. I honestly do not think it's coming from the government. I know that's controversial because typically we don't trust the government. Excuse me. But my experience has been like when Dr. Segala and my colleagues have gone back to Washington or gone to the Pentagon, they're looking to us, asking us what's going on. They don't know, and they're looking to us. And then what happens is these big corporations, that want to control the patents and the technology and the information around this topic, they are the ones that jump in and try to control the narrative. I don't see government insiders and people in politics trying to control this story and push it around for their own re-elections or to stay in government. What we see is people that seem like they're coming out of private contracted agencies and jobs like that are getting shoved into these limelights. People working for Peter Thiel, people working for Lockheed or Northrop Grumman or whatever, that are coming out and stepping into the limelight. And so you have to take all that with a grain of salt, because on the one hand, it's like that's who we should be expecting to be whistleblowers, is people from the inside to come out, people from these companies that allegedly have UFO crash material or involved in it. So again, it's like when we get what we're looking for, what do we expect, and how come we get frustrated with it? But when they're coming out of these agencies and these companies, it's very, very hard to trust. Very, very hard to trust. But, I like to go talk to the local experiencers. I like to get into the community. I like to go to a location and actually talk to all the neighbors and the people that have lived there for several generations and hear their stories. And then all that stuff with spooks or men in black, or if they send somebody from the CIA to sniff around and look at what I'm doing, like, for me, that kind of cuts through the fog. Because when I start talking to the family that lives down the road and they tell me how, oh yeah, my grandpa was abducted by aliens out here, before any government even knew this was here, then to me, there's something true to it. And that's the part of all of this that I love and why I like to get out and do the boots on the ground work. Because when you sit and listen for the storytellers and the people in the podcast, it's very, very hard. But this idea of should podcasters and YouTubers get out of the way and let the scientists do it? Those days are over. That is never going to happen. When I went to Norway and worked on Project Hestlin, I had a whole argument with half of their team of scientists. And when I came back from Norway, I got a bunch of emails from them too. And I basically just had to stand my ground and be like, look, scientists and experiencers have got to learn to work together, or we're both going to fail. We're both going to fail. We're going to reach a dead end if we can't get along. And luckily I'm going back to Norway and they all agreed and we worked it out, but not everybody's like that.
2 minutes to go here. What do you mean by the private industry steering the narrative?
Yeah, I think you're going to see more people coming out of private agencies more than actual out of the government. And what I mean by that is looking for the Pentagon to tell us the truth, or looking for someone from Washington, D.C. To come out and make statements about UFOs. I don't think they really know. They're going to turn around when you look at the book, The Day After Roswell by Philip Corso. He talks about how the technology from the Roswell crash, if this topic is real, if UFOs are real, then this stuff didn't go back to just the government and military facilities, but it was pieced out to private companies to get reverse engineered. It was sent to laboratories that were privately owned, like Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, all of those agencies, Bigelow Aerospace, certain companies that are funded by the government, but they have that no liability. They can have the plausible deniability, and they can control the narrative. So they can manipulate the government and the public and keep all of their money, their patents, and their technology and their secrets in the basement, a secret.
Carl, it's always a pleasure to have you on Spaced Out Radio. You're a true friend of this show. You bring incredible knowledge, and we want to remind everybody that they could go to your YouTube channel, Carl Crusher, hit subscribe, ring that bell. Your knowledge is impeccable, and I know we're going to talk very soon here about all the other intriguing topics that we do. So thank you very much, my friend. It's always a pleasure.
My pleasure too, Dave. Thanks you. Appreciate it.
Carl Crusher, everybody, make sure you go to his YouTube channel and hit subscribe. Coming up next, Swamp Dweller, then Little Timmy James with the UFO report. It's Dave 101 night, and of course, the weird news of the week. Stay tuned. Hour 3 is next. You're listening to Spaced Out Radio with your host, Dave Scott. All right, buddy. Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you. And you get a little bit of a nap and try to travel safe, sir.
Oh, yeah. We'll see if I can get through the border.
And appreciate everybody watching over in the chat. So thanks, everybody. Thanks for having me on, Dave.
Take care. Carl Crusher, everybody. We love him around here. Be right back. Little Timmy James is here. Here.
Yeah.
Swamp Dweller's about 4 minutes, 48 seconds.
Sounds good, sir.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll get back on. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. Great show.
That was a good show.
Yeah. Very cool. Getting all geared.
Oh, I'm already packed up.
Good, man.
There's not even any good weird news recently.
What's that?
There's not even any good weird news recently.
It's pretty flatlined, isn't it?
Everything's kind of flatlined right now.
100%.
Come on. Thank you to Candace, Joe, and Mel WD40 for the super chats. Greatly appreciate the love and support. Here we go with the final hour. Here we go with the third and final hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. Thank you very much for tuning us in wherever you are on this beautiful planet we call Earth. Hello to everyone listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com, we have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. The Desert Clam has set the password for tonight in the SOR Space Travelers Club. Nippotatum. Nippotatum is your password. Use it wisely, Space Travelers, as the Clam sets the password each and every night right here on Spaced Out Radio. Let's head to the swamp.
Hello and welcome to Spaced Out Radio's Swamp. I'm Swamp Dweller, and tonight I'm going to take you on a mystic journey of the unknown, sharing tales of monsters, legends, and nightmares. Welcome to the Spaced Out Radio Swamp. This is in the middle of nowhere, eastern Montana. This happened about 6 p.m. We were playing hide and seek with all my best friends and their siblings. We hear this loud screaming coming from the woods. So as smart people would do, we start hiking to find out what was making the noise. On our way up, we noticed that there were these two deer that were standing completely still, staring at us. They were scarily still. We even make a bunch of noise to try to get their attention and try to scare them away, but they don't budge. They keep looking directly up the mountain. We do not really think much of it. We keep going, and whatever it is still screaming absolutely bloody murder. My friend's older sister is calling back. Then, suddenly, it just stops. We keep going for a bit, and we eventually find mountain lion tracks. We all sit down, and we all have this feeling that something is watching us. So we close our eyes, and I told everyone to point to where the feeling is coming from. We all point to the same exact spot. Above us. My friend and I stay at that spot while her two other siblings go up a little further. They come back down to us and they say they saw the mountain lion. We decided it would probably be a smart idea to go back to the property. We begin to hike down, and the deer are still there. We figure it's because they knew the mountain lion was there. The next day we come back to where we were after being out for the entire day. My friend, her older sister, and I are all very tired. It was about 10 p.m.-ish. The older sister goes outside to pee outside of the trailer. This was in June, so it was still bright. She sprints back inside the trailer and tells my friend and me that there is something out there that ran toward her. We believe that she was making jokes. At around 11 p.m., my friend goes to sleep. I stayed up because I was not very tired. Sometime around 1 a.m., she wakes up to go to the bathroom. She goes outside the trailer and dead sprints back inside and tells me there is 100% something out there, and that whatever it was fast and big and ran toward her. The older sister wakes up my friend, telling me all of this information, and comes to the back of the trailer where we are. There are 4 motion sensor lights on the corner of our trailer, pointed at us, and this is important. We all were scared crapless in the trailer, and I'm lying on my side looking at the window. My friend is there looking out the opposite window. The curtains are closed, but I notice a lighting change. I tell the others what I saw because I don't believe they were paying fully attention. And about 10 seconds later, my friend says the light on my side went off. So now we know something is 100% out there, walking around our trailer, and we are terrified. My friend is wild and decides to go back to sleep for whatever reason. So, her older sister and I work up enough courage to move out to the front of the trailer. It is now probably 2 a.m. if I had to guess. We notice that the lights out front are also getting triggered. We are clueless about what we are supposed to do, so we lock the doors. We didn't find out till the morning that the locks don't work. We grab the biggest knives we can. We sit on the bed that is in the main room. There is a window not even an inch above the bed, so keep this in mind. Whatever was out there kept circling around until it stopped by the window and started tapping on the trailer and hitting it hard enough to shake the trailer. The older sister and I are almost in tears from fear at this point. It is easily around 3 a.m. at this point, and we hear my friend's grandfather coughing outside. The older sister is overly concerned for him, but I force her to stay inside because whatever is out there is not friendly. The coughing stops eventually. Next, we hear a very faint screaming from the woods, as whatever it is outside our trailer was still tapping and rubbing against it. So we knew it was not the mountain lion. Or is it? We eventually fall asleep at around 4:30 a.m., and a couple of hours later we investigate around the trailer and find deep imprints around our trailer that are way too big to be any animal that is out there. The same friend goes there quite often, and the last time they did, I did not tag along for obvious reasons. But something jumped on top of the trailer and was pacing back and forth and would run back and forth every so often. Also, sometimes stopping right over where they were laying.
Thank you, Swamp Dweller, for another creepy story. If you want more just like that, head on over to YouTube, type in Swamp Dweller, hit subscribe, ring that bell. It's got thousands of stories for you just like that. Time for the UFO report.
That is an interplanetary flying space saucer. You have made me very angry. Very angry indeed.
Little Timmy James, good to have you here. You know, I was actually in your studio on Sunday.
Yes.
Sunday when you had Grant Cameron and Nicole Sackich come on and do their report, whatever it may be. I don't know what the hell we call it. Just a
Round table.
Yeah, round table. I didn't realize how small your studio was. It was huge on YouTube.
I know it does, doesn't it?
Really, you know, I mean, it's tiny.
I know. Well, I'm jammed in this little corner, right? But yeah, I know. It's funny because the same thing I said to you is the first time I walked into your studio after watching you show all that time. I was like, what the heck? It does. I thought you had this monstrous area. So yes, the camera does fool us. And this looks like it's about 400 miles behind me, but it's like about 6 inches, I think.
I love your studio. It's awesome.
Yeah,
It
I do
really
too.
I'm telling you, I want to say this before we get going. Carl Crusher, I think, hit it out of the ballpark tonight for warning people of the dangers of YouTube influencers, big name YouTube influencers taking over this subject. And you know, one of the things that I liked about it was that it wasn't insultive to the guys who were doing it, whether it was Chris Ramsey or Logan Paul or Jesse Michaels. It wasn't insulting to any of that or any of them. It was just providing a fact that the narrative is really being tracked.
Yeah.
And if you buy into that narrative because you have social media influence, you're going to get a big part of this news story. You are one of the new faces of ufology rather than what we're used to over the last number of years. So I think that was I'm going to say probably in the last 5, 6 years, I would say this was probably one of our most important shows that we have done.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I really like Carl, and I mean he's just a I guess not reiterate what you said, but yeah, I agree. I think that he just comes across he just tells it straight and he's not insultive and it's the facts. And yeah, I think he gets his point across without throwing anybody under the bus or going, "Ah, I gotcha." And yeah, I really enjoyed. I was so glad he came back for part 2 tonight. I really enjoy him as a guest. He's great.
Yeah, I really did too, and I can't wait to talk to him again. And
Mhm.
we're going to bring him on, again soon, probably in a couple months, because he's just so good to have on the air and just so knowledgeable, and he could talk about anything. And being a YouTube influencer as he is right now,
Mhm.
with over 3 million subscribers. I mean, he knows the insides of it and how YouTube plays favorites and how the UFO community is playing favorites.
Right.
And my Dave 101 is going to continue on that conversation in just the next half hour. But I mean, this is an important conversation. People are getting the wool pulled over their eyes, and they can't have that.
Mm.
We're better than that. We deserve more than that. And I'll get more into it in the next round. But what do you got for us tonight?
Well, I've got a little bit of stuff here. So, Mr. Sean Kirkpatrick is back in the news. I guess there is a little bit of concern when people are starting to come out from out of the woodwork, and there's a little bit of concern about his conflict of interest. So, I found some information and got this stuff. Got a little article here for everybody, and so Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick, the former head of the Pentagon's all domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which is ARROW, has long been polarized figure in the world of a UFO research. After leading the U.S. military's efforts to investigate unidentified aerial phenomenon from 2022 to 2023, Kirkpatrick stepped away from his role amid heated debates with whistleblowers and congressional scrutiny. Now, over a year after his departure, new developments have sparked questions about potential conflicts of interest tied to his post government career. Kirkpatrick, a physicist with decades of experience in intelligence and defense, made headlines during his tenure at ARROW for his skepticism about extraterrestrial claims. His office's reports often clashed with testimonies from figures like David Grush, who alleged secret UFO crash retrieval programs. Since leaving the Pentagon, Kirkpatrick has transitioned into the private sector, taking on consulting roles and speaking engagements that leverage his insider knowledge of UFO investigations. But it's his latest move, joining a high profile aerospace consulting firm with ties to government contracts, that's raising eyebrows. The firm, which has not been publicly named pending further disclosure, reportedly advises companies bidding on Department of Defense projects, including those related to advanced aerial technologies. Sources familiar with the matter suggest that some of these projects overlap with the very anomalies Kirkpatrick once investigated. While there's no hard evidence of wrongdoing, critics argue that his shift from regulator to industry insider could blur ethical lines. Dr. Kirkpatrick spent years shaping the narrative around UFOs from a position of authority, said transparency advocate Laura Mitchell. Now, he's in a role where he could profit from the same systems he oversaw. Even if it's legal, it doesn't pass the smell test for those of us who want accountability. Kirkpatrick has defended his career pivot, emphasizing his commitment to advancing scientific understanding. In a recent interview, he dismissed conflict of interest concerns, stating, "My work has always been about evidence, not about agendas. I'm helping bridge gaps between government and industry, nothing more." He also noted that his Arrow tenure involved establishing protocols for crash retrieval scenarios, a detail revealed in late 2024 that stunned UFO enthusiasts. The timing of this revelation, coupled with posts on X and other social medias highlighting Kirkpatrick's effort to shield emails under Freedom of Information Act exemptions, has fueled speculation. One user wrote, "Why hide everything or every email unless there's something to hide?" While these posts remain unverified, they reflect a growing sentiment that Kirkpatrick's actions, past and present, warrant scrutiny. Ethics experts point out that federal rules require former officials to navigate a cooling off period before engaging with their prior agencies on behalf of private clients. There's no indication Kirkpatrick has violated these regulations, but the perception is impropriety of his impropriety persists. "It's not just about legality, it's about trust," said Dr. Alan Reese, a government ethics scholar. "When someone with his level of access moves into a related field, people naturally wonder, who's he really serving?" For now, Kirkpatrick remains a sought-after voice in aerospace circles, with his expertise in high-stakes anomalies commanding attention. Whether his new role will clarify or complicate the UAP mystery is anyone's guess.
I think that's a great story. I think it's very balanced.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I think Sean Kirkpatrick, in his transition out of Arrow and now wanting to be a consultant and maybe a more of a public figure regarding this subject, is going to be very difficult for him. He didn't
Yes.
gain any trust with people in this community or in the government.
No.
You know, I mean, you hear people talking about him, whether it's the scientists, whether it's the whistleblowers, none of them have any high regard for what he was saying or doing. They
No.
feel like he was covering up from the beginning. They feel like he was not portraying truths. I mean, if you take David Grush, for instance, Grush said he tried to talk to them
Mm-hmm.
when he was at Arrow, and that he kind of got pushed to the side. You know,
Yeah.
that there wasn't any value there. And when you add it all up, it just doesn't sound proper. It
No.
doesn't sound like very many people not just don't trust him, but don't like the guy.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, so how is he going to do that? Well, obviously he's going to be not coming into the UFO community. We're not going to see him at conferences. We're not going to see him talking to the people. We're not going to see him doing interviews. We're going to see him probably working behind the scenes where his name pops up every now and again. That's what
True.
we're going to see.
True.
We're not going to know anything, and he's not going to disclose anything, because I think there's a little bit, lack of a better term, arrogance there that really portrays who this gentleman is. And does he know things? Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Is he going to tell us what he knows? Probably not. Do I see him going in front of Congress? No.
No. No. Yeah. And
5
it's
minutes to go. What do
sorry,
you got, Chief?
pardon me, sorry.
I said we got 5 minutes to go. What do we got?
Well, I got a short little story about UFO history. So this happened in 1976, this month in 1976. So at about 4:30 a.m., several residents of Quixada, Brazil, during an outdoor physical education session, see a large disc-shaped object that glides silently a few feet from the ground, emitting an intense light. At about the same time, in another part of the city, Louis Fernandez is preparing to travel to a site a few kilometers away on his donkey cart. He soon hears a buzzing sound, and a flying object 10 feet in diameter positions itself above him. It slowly descends in front of his cart at about 100 feet away. The device emits a beam of light that strikes the donkey and Barroso, who immediately become paralyzed. A door opens on the UFO, and two small beings emerge. One holds something like a flashlight and aims a beam that strikes Barroso in the face, causing him to lose consciousness. He wakes up in a different spot, dizzy and suffering from a burning sensation on his face, and also a migraine headache. The left side of his body is reddish, and he has difficulty getting into his cart and getting it moving. He asks his wife to take him to the doctor, who prescribes him a tranquilizer. He continues to feel sick, his eyes burn continuously, and the left side of his body is red. A few days later, his hair turns gray and he suffers memory lapses. After his symptoms worsen and the other doctors fail to help, his family checks him into a psychiatric hospital where his condition deteriorates and he passes away.
So weird. So weird.
I know. So much for love and light.
Yeah, no, not much love and light in that, my man.
No, not at all.
You don't want that encounter.
No. You know, it's weird because I'm reading through it and I'm like, I think possibly besides one other story, I think that's the only time I've actually read something where somebody is, you know, become a fatality, I guess, from a encounter. I was like, oh, so yeah, well, not very fun for him, I'm sure, and his family, and that kind of freaky.
No. I mean, the aliens got him. They just didn't take him.
Yeah, exactly. Like I say, no love and light there. And then, yeah, so much for that theory. I think that's probably going to go out the window.
Well, not all of them are good.
No.
Not all of them are good.
Well,
you know,
according
some of them do want to do harm. But here's the thing, though. Let's play devil's advocate with this for a second.
Cool.
We don't know what happened to him while on that craft.
No.
Okay. It may have scared him. They may have showed something that scared him that put him into that position.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he had a recall.
Yeah.
And had a heart attack over it. Maybe he had recall that just caused him to collapse. Maybe they worked on his innards that didn't sit well with the radiation or whatever it may be. Was the donkey okay?
Well, I don't know. It didn't say anything about poor Eeyore, but I think I would imagine that probably not. See, it's funny because we're talking about this, and you and I have touched on this before, and it's kind of a weird parallel. But what I found reading this too is that when I was going through it, and after I got to the end of it, it's like everybody's screaming for full disclosure. This poor guy, you know, this could happen to, you know, a third of the population if this right? This poor guy's just getting his donkey going into town, and you know, has this happen to him. So it was just kind of a weird thought process I had. I was like, man, careful what you wish for.
Oh yeah. You know, you bring up with this story, it piggybacks perfectly on what we were talking about all night tonight with Carl, and then your story with, you know, Sean Kirkpatrick. These are the stories that they don't want out there. They want these stories to go away.
Sure.
They want to have this as a military narrative. They wanted to have it as a safety narrative, a threat narrative. They're not interested in gentlemen like this who had a very severe abduction experience. They're not interested in people who are having encounters. They don't want to know it. They don't care to know it. Your story and my stories, they are just a waste of time. And clearly in this situation, that's a case that needs to be investigated a lot more on it. Tim, we're coming down to the back end of the hour here, or half hour here. I want to just say a big thank you for your UFO report tonight. Very much appreciate it. And I will be talking to you next week when I'm back from UFO Con 2025. And I'll be sure to coming up next, Dave Spaced Out Radio, and your host, Dave Scott. All right, we're clear.
Excellent.
Hello.
All right,
Houston.
buddy.
Hey, buddy.
You had a good day?
We'll talk soon.
All right. Talk to you later.
All right, little Timmy James, everybody. A few other people I didn't get to say hello to here. Well, let's see. Where are you? You're way up here. I got to scroll now. Pony Pong, how are you? Double bass? Or are you double bass? Are you double fisherman? Raven Hayes, how are you? I know, but you might be a fisherman double bass. I don't know. All right, that's already. Double fish. Oh, yeah, double bass. I play drums. I don't play drums. I don't play any instruments. I'm so musically and not talented. I'm so jealous of people who can. Tim Mothman and his goatee. How's your mom doing? Can you give us an update if you don't mind? From Tucson, Arizona. I've been in Canada for 2 weeks too. Hope you guys enjoyed the show tonight. Big thank you tonight to Mel WD40, Cosmic Joe, and Candace for the super chats. Greatly appreciate it. Lisa Piper says, great show. Welcome to SOR chat, Lisa. Thank you. Yeah, Mel, I think I was actually thinking about that, Mel. Love you, Jules. Bob Marley, it's very exhausting. I eventually quit on it. I really did. Here we go with the final half hour of Spaced Out Radio tonight. My name is Dave Scott. We very much appreciate you turning your listening ears wherever you are. Listening in on our terrestrial affiliates around North America, digitally on every major podcast network. Our website, spacedoutradio.com. We have a plethora of features for you. Rock out to Bumblefoot, read the news wire, check out our swag as well. Follow us on X at Spaced Out Radio, Instagram at Spaced Out Radio Show, and on Patreon in the Space Travelers Club. It's that time of the night, that time of the week, where I yell at each and every one of you to get off my lawn. It's a Dave 101.
Open up the door, it's Dave! Who? Dave, D-A-V-E! What is this?
Dave's not here!
It's the Day 101.
I can see you're really upset about this. I honestly think you ought to sit down calmly, take a stress pill, and think things over.
He's the killer! Yeah! He's the killer! He's a mess.
As I stated just a little bit ago to little Timmy James in the UFO report, I think we did one of our most important shows with Carl Crusher tonight that we have done in a long, long time on this episode. The YouTube story of ufology is growing, and it's only going to get bigger and stronger as time goes on. Now, you don't have to like the message. You don't have to appreciate the message. You may love it. You may adore it. You may love it that you see these social media influencers from all walks of life who probably most of them couldn't tell a UFO from Starlink in the sky. But their influence is going to get this subject even bigger than it's ever been. Why? Because if you take somebody like Logan Paul or you take somebody like Sean Ryan, they take their stories to a whole different realm, to a whole different audience. And most of those people might either A, not even know about what UFOs are outside of the movies and, you know, every typical stereotype, but they're bringing people to the subject. That is important. It is becoming more and more universal and accepted that this isn't just a tinfoil hat conspiracy topic anymore, as it has been for the previous 40, 50 years. But with every good side of everything, there is a downside. And as we learned from Carl Crusher tonight during the show, we learned that there is a narrative being played out. Now, over the years, many in ufology have denied that there is a narrative. And many of them will even state, I don't care how disclosure happens as long as it happens. But there's a right way and a wrong way of doing things. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that this current lineup of people who are dictating the UFO story may not have the public's best interest at heart. Sure, they could go on and say on their platforms that, oh, yes, we're doing this for the sake of the public. We deserve a right to know. then why are you controlling the message? There are hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people just in North America alone who have seen UFOs, who believe UFOs are here, who believe alien life forms are visiting this planet. And with that, they are believing that they want the truth of what's going out and what is happening with this topic. Now, many of those people may not be into this subject like you and I, but the numbers are trending upwards. And as long as they trend upwards, we need a vessel in order to get them out. And that now seems to be YouTube. Just because somebody has a big name out there on a social media platform, is a giant influencer who's made millions of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars off of YouTube or any other social media platform, doesn't mean that they are an expert. What it means is that they are trending on a hot topic right now, and they are going to take advantage of it. And those who are providing the information are going to take advantage of that interest as well. Now, I look at this subject as very personal because I'm an experiencer. Do I want the truth? Sure, I want the truth. I want to know what's happened to me. I've been saying that for years. The selfish part of me and the reason why I do this show each and every night is to try to find answers to my own experiences. I didn't ask for them. I didn't ask for ET contact. I didn't ask for UFOs. I didn't ask for Bigfoot. I didn't ask for the paranormal. Did I have an interest in it? Sure, I did. Thought it'd be cool to see something like that. I didn't expect it to engulf my life the way it has over the last decade. No, I didn't. And most of you who have had an experience are the exact same way. Nobody asked about this. Nobody asked for it. Nobody thought when they were a kid that they would be dedicating their lives to try and figure out who those little gray dudes were in your bedroom when you were 10 years old. And then the bright lights came. Now, those YouTube influencers who are taking over this subject, who are being pushed the narrative, from all we know, the majority of them do not have any experiences. Now, having an experience isn't a prerequisite to covering this topic. All you have to do is have an interest in it. But when you're not emotionally involved in this subject, this is something I've learned. When you're not emotionally involved in this subject, it's very easy to fall for the narrative. It's very easy to fall for the threat narrative that the aliens are coming. I mean, look at Tom DeLonge. When he first came out, it was all about aliens are bad. We got to put nukes in space. They fear our nukes. We got to get ready for the invasion that's coming. We got to protect the people of this planet. Total fear-mongering of something that isn't true. There is a phenomena out there. Many people are looking into it, whether they are amateur scientists, amateur journalists, real scientists, or experiencers. We just want to know what's going on. And more importantly, we want the real truth about what's going on. When I first started in ufology, I was told by some very prominent people back then, never trust a spook, because the spooks have taken this subject and they are trying to get it off the map. Since 2017, we've seen a change of attitude with that, where that's what we want to believe. We want to believe verbatim what every whistleblower says. We want to believe what every government official has said about this. Hell, nobody questioned Bill Nelson from NASA when all of a sudden he was talking about all these UAPs that the U.S. fighter pilots in the Army, Navy, and Air Force were seeing. Nobody questioned about what does NASA know. That's all part of the controlled narrative. The reason why you're only seeing whistleblowers go on certain YouTube channels or on News Nation and not anywhere else is because the narrative is being controlled. Who's controlling it? We don't know. Who is pulling the strings? We don't know. Who is releasing the videos? We don't know. We don't know much because they, whoever they are keeping that from us, and they are only going with certain people in order to get the message out. Their message. That is why all of a sudden with Skywatcher, you're seeing Logan Paul right beside Jake Barber. You're not seeing a Richard Dolan or a Grant Cameron or a Melinda Leslie or somebody who's a famous name in this field for decades going along with it. No, they need the influencer there because Logan Paul has over 30 million subscribers. He's on the WWE. He's the owner of Prime. The guy has made it big in doing what he's doing, and it all started on YouTube. And good for him. He's a self-made young man. You don't have to like his product, but you have to be impressed with the way he did it. And now it's about UFOs. See, they don't want George Norrie out there. They don't want Jimmy Church out there. They don't want Dave Scott out there because we may ask some questions. They're going to go with the influencer who goes out on social media every day, does their podcast, does the wrestling gig, and is able to get 30 million people, probably majority of them 30 years old and younger, to get the message out. The rest of us are feeding off of scraps. When you can have that power of getting to people, you can narrow who you give the message to. You don't have to go to every podcaster and their dog to get interviewed. That's the thinking of it. And I think ufology has to take some responsibility on its own as well. There are too many shows out there that are playing aha, caught you moments, setting up people for failure, trying to embarrass them. That's a dangerous side of podcasting out there. They're not doing it for themselves. They're looking for the clickbait on it. They're looking to start an argument, start a fight. And I think a lot of those have given black eyes to the interviewers saying, hey, man, stay out of the YouTube world, stay out of the ufology world, because there's a bunch of jerks out there that you don't need to be sabotaged on your message, where they're not going to take your full paragraph of what you said. They're only going to take a snippet of that paragraph and blow it out of proportion. That is what clickbait society is all about. That is what the I'm offended society is all about. It's not about that. The fact is that we have real people who just want answers. Might be you. How do we get those answers? This is why I believe disclosure should come from the people. People like you who've had an experience, who need a gateway to tell their story. And if they're not going to be able to do that, maybe somebody could tell their story for them. The real encounters, the real stories, the real advocates of this subject that we love, that we want to learn. And this just isn't about UFOs. This is also about consciousness. Psionics is consciousness. This is about cryptids like Bigfoot or Dogman. This is about paranormal, the near-death experiences, astral travel. It is about the phenomenon in general. And if we are not following what the phenomena is doing, and we're allowing a government agency or agencies to control what we're allowed to know, then are we really solving any problems? It doesn't matter how many whistleblowers come out. It doesn't matter how many different Lou Elizondo type people come out. It doesn't matter how many Chris Mellons come out or Gary Nolans come out to defend the scientific community. It doesn't matter. Because as long as the message is controlled by a number of people, that is the message you will get. You're not going to get the truth. You're not going to get to the heart of the matter. And gosh darn it, they really don't care about what you are experiencing. That's the sad reality. That's the sad reality of where we are right now in ufology, especially. We are on the precipice of something that could be absolutely amazing. It could absolutely change the dynamic of every human on this planet. And we don't know. We don't know. All we see is a bunch of disclosure for dollars coming on out. Am I frustrated? Sure, I am. And it's not because these certain people won't come on this show or other shows like ours. Has nothing to do with that. But if you're blind to the fact that this narrative is controlling the subject matter by a few people, if you don't believe that, then you're blind. You're blind to the story, you're blind to your experience, and you're never going to get an answer for what you may have seen. That's the reality of it. Can we change it? Sure, we can. How? More people coming out. More influencers like Carl Crusher coming to the doorstep of the investigation and digging right into it, doing their own fact finding. That's not controlled. That's independent. We need more independence in this field. That's where the truth lies. Because if you think the government and the agencies, after all these years, are going to give up their knowledge of UFOs and alien crash retrievals and alien bodies, we're never going to get the answers. That's your Dave 101.
As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Loud noises!
I am good at things, fighting and reading the news.
It's time once again for Spaced Out Radio's Weird News of the Week.
All right, we're going to start off here with a little bit of a scary story. This one we probably all had nightmares about when we were kids. A babysitter looked under the bed to reassure a worried child that there wasn't a monster hiding there. And she came face to face with a man who wasn't supposed to be there, a sheriff's office in Kansas said in a news release. The 27-year-old was booked into jail this week after a struggle with the babysitter that knocked the child to the ground. The Barton County Sheriff's Office said deputies were called late Monday to the home near Great Bend, a city of about 15,000 in the western part of the state. The suspect was gone when they arrived, but the babysitter told them that the child had been complaining about a monster before she found the suspect. The man once lived in the home, but that there was a protection from abuse order issued against him to stay away from the property, the sheriff's office said. Deputies searched but were unable to find the man until the next day when he was captured after a foot chase. Online court records show the man had posted about 10 days earlier after he was charged with a criminal threat, domestic battery, and violating a protection from abuse order. Those allegations were alleged to have occurred in January and February. But following his latest arrest, a judge ordered him jailed without bond. The sheriff's office had additionally requested charges including aggravated burglary, aggravated battery, and child endangerment. Who is this guy? What kind of nutbar does that? Hides under a kid's bed. That's just freaky. Absolutely freaky. Well, when you go to take things to the Goodwill or any sort of donation store, do yourself a favor. Check your pockets. A Pennsylvania woman is desperately searching for a jacket she donated to charity after realizing she left a $2.5 million lottery ticket in the pocket. Yeah. Mildred here said she purchased the ticket for a Pennsylvania Cash 5 drawing at the Shop and Save store in Murraysville in May 2024. And 2 weeks later, she was surprised to learn she had matched all 5 numbers: 14, 22, 23, 35, and 38. Yeah. Mildred attempted to locate the ticket, but soon came to a startling realization she had left it in the pocket of a jacket she donated to Vietnam Veterans of America. I was stupefied. There are no words for it. There is no expression. How can I get it back? She attempted to track down the jacket, but soon learned the charity sends its donations out across the country and even overseas, and had no way to track the item. The Pennsylvania Lottery told Mildred there was no way to claim the prize without the physical ticket in hand. The ticket expires May 8th. What else can I do? Mildred said. Cry out loud and hope that something will happen positive on my end? Could you imagine? Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. All right. A woman who died on the operating table after watching surgeons drill through her skull explains what she saw after death. Pam Reynolds from Atlanta, Georgia, was just 35 years old when she underwent the brain surgery in 1991. She talked about her near-death experience. She underwent the knife with Robert F. Spletzer at the Barrow Neurological Institute back in 91 and recalled some jaw-dropping experiences when she died on the operating table. Yeah. Podcaster Christina Randall shared Pam's story, said Pam had been suffering from dizziness, as well as losing control of her speech and experiencing paralysis before a brain scan showed that she had experienced an aneurysm close to her brainstem. Christina said, as a last resort, they decided to put her under the knife for a rarely performed procedure called a standstill operation that could improve her chances of surviving. Well, she died on the table. Her body temperature was lowered to 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Her breathing and her heartbeat completely stopped and blood completely drained from her head. Yeah. She said she heard a female voice say, her arteries are too small. And Dr. Spletzer says, I think it was him, use another side. Yeah. She could recall her entire operation like she was watching it right above. Yes, she was able to come back and tell her story. She came back. The doctors were in awe. The nurses were in awe of what she was able to see. And they believed her, saying there was no way she could have known. Absolutely no way. How freaky is that? Thank you to everyone listening in tonight on The Big Show. We really appreciate you tuning us on in. What a fun show it was. This is definitely one that you are going to want to hear again. So make sure you check us out on our free archives on YouTube and any major podcast network, because this is what we do. And our archives are always free. So thank you to Tim James for Ron Bubblefoot Ball. This show is copyright Space Radio. Adventures Limited. Thank you so much for being with us. Just together, my friend.
Make a mistake. We're watching.
We watched you for so long. We want you to fall. We will expose you all. I know you're out there somewhere. Watching me.
Yes, the blue train has done for the night. But soon, my friends, we shall ride again. Seats are available. Tickets never expire. If you want to bring a friend, we've got room empty. All right, we are clear. Clear as a bell. Clear as day. All right. $3.25. going? Do 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 do. Apple smoked bacon. That would be nice. Glad you guys enjoyed tonight's show. I know it's a little bit of a different topic, but I thought it was an important one to bring to your attention. This is a show that that probably you want to share, just to get the different topic out there. What are your thoughts? Let me know in the chat room. Tim Mothman, Mom had a good surgery. Much love, my friend. All right. Come on. Hurry up and down and load this. Oh, wait a minute. Are we be? Move that over here. Close this off here. Sweet Robbie G, how you doing, brother? Hope you're having a good night there, bud. Oh, by the way, sweets, Nicole Sakic has confirmed for Vegas. Also confirming for Vegas, Jurgen Hess, a.k.a. Hoodoo Tall. The Sweets will be in the hot seat tomorrow. Getting ready for his amazing weekend. If you've never heard the Sweets talk on the weekends, his shows are amazing. Rob is, I'm going to tell you right now, I think the best weekend host we've ever had. I know the whole list because I worked with him. Sweet Robbie G is the best. Nobody can stroke chin hair like Sweet Robbie G. That's the truth. Dude's amazing. And not only is he amazing, but he's even a better person when you meet him personally. So excited to see him in Vegas. So pumped up. I'm going to be up in 3.5 hours. I packed my ULP t-shirt today, the Unidentified Lighting Phenomena t-shirt. Emperor Penguin, how you doing? Oh, yeah, RG and R. Keith tomorrow night. That's going to be some serious woo. Serious woo. Just for you, Rob, I'm hitting the Tim Hortons at 4 o'clock in the morning. Grabbing some breakfast on my way out of town. Tim, I'm surprised you're here tonight, buddy, to be blunt. Really surprised. Glad to hear things went okay for Mom, though. That's all that's important right there, my friend. Oh, I'm going to bring Sweet Robbie. This is what I'm bringing to Vegas for Sweet Robbie G. I'm going to bring him a bunch of Canadian snacks. Number one, like chocolate bars, potato chips. Then I'm going to bring him a hockey stick. Deidre, I could tell you right now, in 24 hours from now or less, I will have Taco Bell in my system. Oh, hell yeah. Taco Bell is going to be sitting in my stomach. And Dave's going to be happy, happy, happy. To be truthful. Oh, it'll get through customs. Yep. I think I'm bringing you about 4 or 5 different chocolate bars and candies, dude. Taco Bell is in Canada. The closest one to me would be about 2 hours away. It's very shameful. Very shameful. What's the Las Vegas of Canada? Niagara Falls. No, definitely not Edmonton. Bishop, how you doing? Welcome to SOR Chat. Blue Cruise, I cannot because there's no Uber Eats where I live. I live in the middle of nowhere, man. Cool Arrow, how are you? Ouch. All right, get rid of that. Make sure that's all there. Good. All right, everybody. Tom Conrad, welcome to SOR Chat. Philip Blair, how are you? Crux Rux, welcome to SOR Chat. Yeah, I know, Crux Rux. I know. The hair's like totally white. Totally white. I'm growing it out a little bit again. Fast Hemi, good night. All right, everyone. I got to say goodnight to you because I got to finish up here. And then I got to be up in about 3.5 hours in order to make the 5-hour drive to Vancouver International Airport. So you guys have a great one. Sweet Robbie G is in from Friday to Monday. Starts off with our Keith Andrews tomorrow night. And you guys have a great time. For those of you who are in San Francisco attending UFOCon 2025, be sure to come up and say hello to me. And we will talk to you very soon. Have a great weekend, everybody. Much love, and we'll see you soon.
Stay healthy, my friend.
You too.
If you need bail money, give me a call.
Always, Dad. Take care.
You too.